Feliciano slide.
You got it?
Okay. Is someone manning that one?
No, it's Zoom. We always attach it to Zoom.
Oh, okay.
She does the.
You can just advance it to the Feliciano thing and close the bookmark out.
Terry. Mr. Ashley sits down, you got to be close by.
You can just be talking, make him an honorary sergeant at all.
Yeah, always, always. Vic, one last time, would you like to call things to order?
If you take your seats, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here in Madison, Georgia. And please get ready for the Dr. Ashley.
Thank you, Mr. Drawdy. So, call the meeting to order here. Having a little fun with Vic there as our always call to order commission member with the great voice that always got everybody calm when I couldn't do that. So I guess I'll go ahead and establish quorum here. Let's see, looks like we got 3, 4, 6, 7. I think we've got, is anybody online, Liz, do you know?
Do we have anybody joining from? Dr. Medeiros will not be here today, unfortunately.
Okay, and then Pete, is he gonna be here online or be here? Do we know about Pete?
We do not have him online, and were we expecting him in person? Maybe he'll join us late.
Okay, well, we have quorum, so that's good. Okay, I'd like to thank the staff, guys, for, getting set up today. Great job, it looks great, and I know we're gonna have a great meeting. I hate to start the morning off with sort of a word of sadness, but we're gonna make it a celebration of life. I think most of y'all probably know by now, one of our giants in trauma surgery in the state as well as nationally and internationally passed away here recently. Dr. David Feliciano. I think most people in this room know him. He was really at Grady for many, many years and really continued and improved a trauma program that had been there going way back into the years of Harlan Stone and many others. Obviously, that's where I did my trauma fellowship and have a very soft spot in my heart for Dr. Feliciano. I remember my interview with him. I was actually his first trauma fellow at Grady when he came here from Texas, where he had been at Ben Taub for many years and really became famous there in trauma surgery and started writing a lot of textbooks and a lot of papers. And so really that's where I got my start. And after I say the first fellow, and he likes to say first and only fellow, I think I broke him. And the reason he says that, really there's a technical clarification there. Right after I interviewed and was there a year and then had left, Dr. Rosicki came to town and took over the trauma fellowship, and then she did all the recruiting. So technically he didn't have to recruit anymore. So I really didn't break him, but he would tell you differently. But anyway, David was just a great mentor to me, a great friend. I remember not long before he passed, he had retired from really clinical surgery, but he was still at shock trauma in Maryland and doing some really conference work and education with the residents, and still won the darn teaching award, not even being on clinical service at a new hospital. That's how what he loved to teach and how he was recognized. One morning in the ER, I got this transfer from like South Georgia, and this guy had or female, I don't remember now, but had been shot in the chest and was shot right in the infracardiac vena cava. And if you know, the surgeons in the room know that's only about 2 centimeters long and right below the heart. And they managed to get stitches in that and get it closed, but they actually ligated the whole cava. So his lower abdomen was going to swell, his intestines were going to swell. There's no blood return, really not just through collaterals back to the heart. And so I'm standing there looking at this guy. I'd never had a patient survive that before. So now I'm like, what do I do with this guy? Because we've got to reconstruct that. And so I actually, you know, every now and then, about once a year, maybe once every 3 years, I'd call David and I say, I got one of those cases. And I called him on his cell phone on Sunday morning. He answered and I said, I could use some help. And he listened to the story and he said, well, you know, he goes, I think there was a paper. I think there was a case report on that. Give me a minute. I'll call you back. And sure enough, he goes to the study. He finds this report from like 1970 or 1995 or some crazy long time ago. And sure enough, there was one case report in the literature how this was handled. And they did a reroute of a graft. I won't go into all that. And so we had a plan. And so we never got that. We were going to do it the next day, put him on ECMO and do some fancy things and we couldn't quite get that far. He passed, but anyway, still that's the kind of relationship we had. That's how smart he was when I needed something. And, you know, I had quite a bit of experience, obviously just going into that, but he always had more. And so anyway, it was a sad day, but I just, for the state and for all of us, I'd like to acknowledge him. You can see his picture here. His obituary's been out. If you want to read more about him, we can get you a copy. But anyway, we just want to honor him and pray for his wife, Grace Rosicki, who was really the love of his life, and they just had such a wonderful relationship and was well respected by so many throughout the trauma community. Okay, moving on. We have recognition this morning for two outstanding commission members. I'll start with Vic. I think a man that needs no introduction, but I think everybody knows Vic, but he has been with EMS appointee to the commission since 2014. He has served 10 years. Wow, it doesn't seems like a lot longer than I thought. It's time flies, I guess, you know.
He said he feels like it's been since 1984.
Really?
That's okay. Yeah.
Well, you know, as he's a senior commission member now, the memory's starting to fade a little bit. Okay, but he's actually formerly served as secretary and treasurer and served on the EMS subcommittee during his tenure with the commission. And we'd like to thank Vic for his service. So Vic's always someone I could count on when we got in a tough spot, and always answered the phone and didn't run away. So I appreciate that. So Vic, would you come forward?
If you want to come out here, I can undo the cord.
I'll come over here. Yeah. So Vic, in grateful appreciation of your dedication and service to improve trauma assistance in Georgia, we'd like to present you with this flag. No check, but flag.
Leah said that's what I was coming for. Well, let's get this thing. Come up here. Get a good picture. No, I'm on Facebook won't see this thing.
You did it? Good. Well, make sure we don't have it upside down. I've done that before. Okay. Thank you, Vic.
Well, I got one little small thing, Doc, before you finish it up. Terry Cobb, I could not have ever wanted anything, another great guy that is going to take this position. I know he'll go much farther than I ever dreamed. But I want Terry to open this in front of all these, because the great men and women, but particularly the great men around this table, have all had this particular item, and they require and ask that you participate in this as you come to these meetings. So if you will, show the people what you now have as a new commission member.
You're right to be tentative about opening that, Terry.
So, yeah, go ahead and pull that out, show it. It's not going to buy. Absolutely. Look at that.
Beautiful.
I mean, yes, sir. Listen. Wear every sock. Okay, any man can wear every sock, but only the great men around this table will wear a color. So.
I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hey, listen, I've appreciated you guys. It's been the greatest honor of my life to serve on this particular commission. It really has. So that tells you that I guess I don't do a whole lot, but overall, it's still beyond the shadow of a doubt, it's been the greatest honor of my life. And I appreciate you. I love you guys. I was gonna hang around, but Linda's got family coming in, so we're gonna buzz on that. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dave. Also, Jim Atkins is rotating off, and I don't see Jim. I think he could be here
It's
today.
not here.
Okay, but we have a plaque for him. We can get that to him as well, and we appreciate his service. He served since 2020 and also served on the EMS subcommittee. Now on, we have new commission appointees, and I'll start with Terry here since you just heard his name and he was presented with his socks. We all have those and wear them. So sometimes we do a photo shoot with, show off our socks. So don't be afraid to wear those socks. Terry is a EMS 911 zone provider representative and was just appointed and just sworn in by the governor. So welcome, Terry. And would you like to make any comments or?
I'm looking forward to working with this group. It was an incredible honor to be nominated to serve alongside y'all, and I'm just looking forward to the opportunity.
We appreciate you being here. I've known Terry a long time, so I know he's going to work hard and not miss a beat. And then Dr. Smith, a man that needs no introduction as well. He's been here and served honorably before. And when I heard that he might be coming back for another tenure, I was very excited about it. So Jay, thank you for coming back and being willing to get in the shooting match again.
Happy to be back from the dead, getting the band back together.
Dr. Ashley, does he have socks?
I do, yeah.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure.
So we may send out a memo, Liz, remind me, we may send out a memo and have to have a sock check next time. But we'll watch your, well, some of us don't wear socks. So
That's right.
we may have to get
Remain nameless.
get a sock tattoo or something.
That's right.
So, but we'll, meet me afterwards. We'll talk about
That's
that.
right.
We'll work on that. All right. And then finally, Dr. Bleacher, Jay was sworn in as well. So now Liz informs me that we have to comply. And Dr. Bleacher hasn't been sworn in. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to swear you in today since the governor just couldn't be here. The helicopter was not working this morning.
That's
So
right.
I'm going to step in and do this. Okay. Get out here. Okay, John, would you raise your right hand, please? I, John Christopher Bleacher,
I, John Christopher Bleacher,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will discharge all the duties lawfully required of me
that I will discharge all the duties lawfully required of me
as a member of the Georgia Trauma Care Network Commission
as a member of the Georgia Trauma Care Network Commission
to the best of my ability and understanding,
to the best of my ability and understanding,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome
Thank you.
back, John. Okay, I think with my chairman's report, it's due to give an update on the $61 million stabilization plan. There's been a lot of work going on. We're in session now, the legislators are in session now. And so we have been, it's been a very busy time, probably the most busiest, at least for Liz and I, for being at the Capitol and the staff, Katie and Gabby, everybody's been working hard, making our rounds. And so just to give you an idea, this started back in the summer, and we've met with Matt Hatchett, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the House, Butch Parrish, Darlene Taylor, all on the House Public Health Committee. We met with the House Appropriations Subcommittee, presented before them. We met in the Senate with Dr. Watson and the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, Senator Kennedy, Pro Tem, as well as his Chief of Staff. We've met with the governor's policy team. There's about 5 or 6 policy members there for that presentation, and met with the Lieutenant Governor's policy analyst. So pretty much everybody that has any word or input into the funding mechanism we've met with, and we've gone over this. It's weaned down a little bit from the presentation you saw this summer, but basically what the issues were and what our needs were. It's been received very positively on the Hill about bending the death curve down, being 16% above the national average or worse than the national average with our mortality from trauma to now 6% better or 6% below the national average. The Southeast region is still above the national average. So this has gone very well, that this is what we've presented as a victory lap for the trauma system, for our legislators, for our stakeholders working together. We've done what the commission was set out to do, and that was to decrease the death rate and improve care and improve access. And we've done all those things. So with that, we've also showed that a return on investment, that this has also been positively received, that each dollar invested in the trauma system with the 1,803 lives that were saved in 2020 alone because of the things that we've changed and done, that translates into $5.4 billion in lifetime personal income for those folks, and also translates into about $600 million in tax revenue to the state. That's lifetime tax revenue. So what we've tried to change the conversation is that dollars spent on trauma is an investment, not a cost. And there's a positive return on investment. And that's about, for every dollar spent on the Trauma Commission, $22.60 return on investment. Pretty darn good. And just to give you an idea, for the Savannah project, for they cleaned out the harbor or deepened the harbor, that return on investment was about 1 to 7. $1 spent was about $7 return. So again, we've not met anybody that did not like the data. People have been appreciative of the data. Now we just see where we fall out. With that being said, we've asked for $61 million in additional funding. That would allow us to do a lot of things, but we realize that's a big ask, and we've also given the legislators a possible option, which is where we would do a phased in approach where, we're on readiness costs now, readiness funding, we're about 8 cents on the dollar, what the commission can fund for readiness costs. And our goal was to get to 50 cents on the dollar. So if we did that over 3 years, where we go from maybe 8 to about 20%, then up to 30-something%, then on up to 50 over 3 years, maybe 25 million the first year, 45 the second. I'm just these numbers are loose. We have a slide that shows the actual data, but you get the idea. There's a possibility for a phased in approach. What I've relayed to the legislators, that this would show support, this would show seriousness if we at least got started, and that would allow us to go out and recruit further centers because they can see that we're serious and that we don't have all the funding we need up front, but we are at least headed down the right path. So if you have legislators that certainly now is the time to touch base with them and put in a good word. And so I think there's a lot more we could talk about with that. I'll be happy to field any questions if there's any. And then finally, I'd like to honor our executive director here. She has been elected as the next president of the Society of Trauma Nurses, National Society. So we have a president of a national society at the table. So congratulations, Liz.
Wear my socks.
Yeah, wear your socks. That might get you a second term. But anyway, that's a big deal. And again, it looks good for Georgia and keeps it at the table nationally.
Did you want to review the phased approach?
Do you have it up where people could see it? That would be great.
Dr. Ashley, one point of clarification, was the ask for 61 or 122?
So 122, Jay, is the total readiness cost for all trauma centers, 1, 2, 3s, and 4s. And so what we wanted, like I said, we were only able to fund about 8 cents on the dollar, or 8% of readiness. So our ask was, we feel like that should be up to 50%. Back when we had the large funding that Governor Perdue put in back in 2007, 2008, we were at 58 cents on the dollar, and that seemed to be a sweet spot. So what we said, what we've been promoting is that, you know, should it be 35%? Should it be 100%? It's probably never going to be 100%. What we think is a reasonable solution would be 50-50 split between the state and the private sector. And so if we could get to 50 cents on the dollar, that would be reasonable. And if you look at 50%, then half of 122 is 61. So that's where that number comes from. So we've asked for 61 additional funding, 61 million additional funding.
And
That-
so the current, the thought was the current allocation towards readiness could at least help us with some startup grants and expansion for additional centers.
And is there a slide up?
You know what, I
Is that-
have, it's this one.
Do we
Sorry.
have the other
Yeah.
one?
It's
We can just show folks.
wrapped up in the whole thing.
It was too late developing to get into your packets, but we do have a slide on it that can, we could get, I was sort of quoting the numbers from memory, but we could get that one slide to folks. So just to give you the numbers, the phased-in approach, it would be, phase one would be, if we did 25 million into the budget in addition, then that would give us 20 cents on the dollar for readiness. Phase two, the next year, if they did 43 million, that would put 35% readiness. And then phase three, the next year, would be 61 million, that would put us at 50%. So basically, it's just a phased approach if you broke that 60 million down over 3 years.
She got it.
She got it? Is it up there? You can see on the slide there, Jay. I don't know if the other guys can see that. And you can have the slide. We can send it out if you want it.
So, Dr. Ashley, so, I mean, I've been in some of these presentations and I can almost give you a presentation by heart right now, and I'm a little bit confused. When we asked for the 61 million, we were asking that for not just a one-time drop, but a yearly thing, right?
Correct.
So then how does this phased-in approach work then?
So basically, if they don't have the money to give us the
Oh, so you're
61
just giving them
million,
options.
I'm giving them
You're
options.
giving them options.
So
Okay,
this
got
is reading the tea leaves from 100 presentations,
it. Yeah,
giving
exactly.
them instead of going 100% or zero, saying, we need the 100%, but you could
Right.
do this. And so what that would do is, it's not 61 million one time over 3 years. It's like, the first year,
You get 20.
you get 25, the next year you get 43, the next year you get 61, and then 61, and then 61, and then 61.
Got it. Okay.
That's what we mean by phased in.
Okay. So that's a new part of the presentation.
Right, that's a literally just recently,
Yeah,
since your
okay.
last visit to the
Yeah,
Capitol.
right, yeah, okay.
And so I would like to acknowledge Dr. Dunn too, who has really served as a great vice chair and done some, getting up at 4 a.m. and flying into Atlanta, because Savannah and Atlanta is a pretty good little drive, and has gone to several of these meetings with me, especially when it was things that involved Senator Watson, which is your
Right.
senator. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, but good question. Anybody, I just wanted y'all to know about that. So if you get asked about it, you know, I don't want anybody to think, you know, everything, all these slides, everybody's, this is open access. This is all over the Capitol. So you're welcome to anything.
Just one last question, Dennis, I'm sorry. Have we figured out as a commission how the legislature works to get this to a vote? We're doing a lot of talking to a lot of people, but I still don't, I'm a neophyte when it comes to how do we get it across the finish line? Does somebody need to initiate a letter to somebody else? And then how does that all work? I don't know.
So Senator Watson, so there's the Senate side, and jump in if I'm wrong, Liz, but I'm going to explain it best I can. So correct me if I'm wrong. So there's the Senate budget and there's the House budget, and they don't always line up.
That's
So
correct.
we approach both.
Right.
Senator Watson has sent a letter Senator Senator Watson, who's over at Health and Human Services
Right.
and involved with the budget, has supported the 61 million and has sent a letter to Senator Tillery.
Really?
in the
Okay.
Senate, And
This
has
is
sent a
new.
letter to the Lieutenant Governor saying that he supports this. And on the House side, the House Budget Committee we just presented to, they heard
Tuesday.
it and we put our ask in. And so now they will go behind closed doors within the next few days and they will write it out on a piece, on a spreadsheet. And the Senate will do the same thing. And so if it gets on that spreadsheet, the Senate might say one thing, the House might say another.
Then they go
then-
into conference.
Then it goes to conference.
Right.
If we don't get on the spreadsheet on either one,
Mhm.
we're in trouble. So we just need to get on somebody's spreadsheet
Right.
so they can talk about it behind closed doors.
And that's the appropriations committees, right?
Correct.
Both sides, right? Yeah.
And Courtney's been doing this a lot longer than I have. Did I capture that fairly or?
The budget process will start over in the House, and they'll work on the budget, then they send it over to the Senate, but you're right, they've already got their things. And if they agree, then it's good, if not, they go to the conference committee,
Right.
and the conference committee hashes out how they wanna work it. It's an interesting process.
So
They used to call it going behind the green door. And I guess somewhere at the Capitol 50 years ago, there was a green door. I don't know. Must have been a committee room, but that was, the Green Door Committee was the House and Senate conferees on the budget. So, but that process still works that same way.
And so
Thank you.
the people that put it on the paper, like
Right.
you're saying, who, does somebody, we have talked to those people
Yeah,
and there's more than one.
yeah,
We just need one of them to write it down.
yeah. And the good news is we got a great story to tell. Everybody loves the story we tell.
Yeah.
Everybody is supportive, at least to our face.
Yeah.
It's when it comes down to money, it's a different story. So, all right, thank you, appreciate it.
Anything to add to that, Liz?
Nope, I think we covered it.
Oh, Jim just came in. Okay. I see Mr. Atkins just arrived. So Jim, welcome. And just wanted to acknowledge you. Why don't you come forward? We have a plaque for you. Jim has served since 2020 and has worked through the EMS committee on the hospital signage project. We'd like to thank Jim for his efforts and all that you've done for the commission. So Jim, we'd like to, as you rotate off, present you with this plaque.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry, I had myself down for 10 a.m.
That's okay. I'm glad you made it. So it says, grateful appreciation, your dedication and service to improve the trauma care system in Georgia.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you
For all
so
your
much.
hard work.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's get a picture for you here.
All right, for history.
For history.
Awesome, thanks.
That way there'll only be one Atkins on the committee involved.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. I'm still willing to help on that other project.
Great, awesome. The signage.
Sign project. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a great day.
Okay, and then finally, the last part of my report, can I get approval of, or a motion to approve the November meeting minutes? So I have a first, second. Any discussion? Courtney? Ashura? They must be tight now. Courtney keeps it straight. All right, well, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Okay. Is it over to you now?
The next thing is the bylaws amendment on the officer terms. So that was going to be handled by Dr. Maderos, but in her absence, if you recall, in the minutes that you just approved, we had to address that we had a missed officer renomination period. So the motion at the meeting, at the last meeting, was to retain the current officers until the next meeting,
Which is this meeting?
which is this meeting. So we are due for a bylaws review and update in November. So I guess the best way to do this is to just vote to extend those terms until the bylaws, like, you'll have to appoint a bylaws committee by May, by next meeting. So that group can review for November. But we still have to, so you could probably handle this one of two ways. This is me acting in as Dr. Madeira is, you could vote to extend the term, and then the bylaws will be reviewed, and that amendment that you make would be reviewed by the group who is assigned to do the every 3-year bylaw update. Or I think, and Courtney, you are much better on this than I am, you could make another motion to retain the current elected officers until the November meeting, at which time the bylaws are reviewed. I guess both are the same. One is just amending the current bylaws, so.
I would make the motion that we retain what we have until the bylaws committee brings back the recommendation that we will retain officers in place until the bylaws can be resolved in the normal process.
That will accomplish it.
So we need a second on that?
I'll say that.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. Throw that away.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And then let me just say, I forgot to mention in your packet, guys, and here's what we call the one pager. If you can't remember everything about the ask and trauma system in Georgia and our great accomplishments and what's happened for the death rates gone down or the mortality. It's a one pager, but it's actually a 2 pagers at front and back. Very nicely done. And again, I'd like to thank our staff. Just, you guys are incredible working on stuff like this. So great job, very professional.
Thank you. Now we have staff because we have a marketing entity.
Well,
helping us with that.
It
It really makes a
really
huge
looks good,
difference. Yeah.
and it's very brief, and it's got the data points on it. So if you can't remember it, just stick that in your pocket. You can talk to anybody, okay? And don't we have more at the door
Yes.
for people?
On the table.
Everybody take one, take some, pass them out, give them to your kids, spread the love.
Take them to school.
Take them to school. But anyway, so,
And we
Thanks for
made,
doing that.
we made copies of that with a white background that all of your administrators got in the administrator group, because we recognize, it's a little bit easier to print out something without that dark background, especially if you're doing it on your own printer, but those are obviously print shop copies, but, so that's a little bit more user friendly for.
all right, and so we'll move into Liz's report, the executive director report.
Yeah, just for the sake of time and to get us back on track, I have a detailed report in your packet, so I will certainly entertain any questions on that as I conclude my highlights. But the big thing that I want to welcome Crystal Shellnut to our team. Where is Crystal? She's looking over here. So Crystal is, her role is relatively new. It's the manager for regional trauma system development. So in that role, thankfully for me, Crystal will be over all of the RTACs, which we desperately need someone to be out there and, helping to kind of get each RTAC on structure aligned, I think, and everybody kind of rowing in the same direction. And with all of the work that Dr. Todd and Gina are doing with GQuIP, it's very exciting that we'll have some regional data. So these folks on the regional level will actually have something to chew on that they can, make improvements and they can share with their groups. And I think that will help with recruitment and retention of members. So that's been a challenge in some regions. So welcome, Crystal. Crystal will also be handling Stop the Bleed. Crystal's well-known in the EMS community. She's a paramedic by education, has a master's in emergency management. Did I get that right? Public health, thank you. And she was the Region 10 RTAC coordinator. So Heather Morgan is still throwing spitballs my way because we took Crystal from me. In the most friendly way.
That's right.
And it's my region too, so I'm mourning it, but happy that she's with us. But no, this is a great addition to our team, and she brings a great skill set that I think complements all of us. So welcome, Crystal. And now you will begin to get RTAC reports or sort of summary reports from Crystal. So, and Crystal, when I'm done, if you want to add some of your comments in there, that would be great. So I'll flip it back to you if that's okay. The only other thing really from my report that I wanted to highlight is you may remember back in our November meeting, I mentioned that Senate Rural Medical Personnel Recruitment Study, the special study committee that was put together by the Senate, led by Senator Bo Hatchett out of Habersham. And that committee report was finalized. It's actually in your packet. There are a couple items that are relative to us that I think, Courtney, I'll have you address in the EMS committee report, if that's okay. Because they want to use some of their study findings to help support patient transport in some of the areas where there's so-called deserts in transportation. So that will really kind of help broaden our mission and what we're tasked to do in 3111-102. So that's very helpful. Dr. Ashley already updated you on all of the work of the 61 million ask and where that has gone. We are going to be in the final throes of preparation for our spring meeting, which will be at Chateau Elan. And we don't normally do that meeting that late in May, but we had a lot of scheduling conflicts, so we appreciate everyone making time to be able to come to that meeting. So it's 3 days, May 20th, 21st, and 22nd. The 20th is the GCTE meeting in person there at Chateau, as well as the trauma administrators will have another finance workshop, and that will be Valerie Wrinkle, who's a great speaker, and who's got a lot of really good tips and things for trauma center finance. And then May 21st, all day, that Tuesday will be the GQuIP meeting. And then Wednesday morning, we'll wrap up with the commission meeting from 9 to 12, I believe it is. I think that's all that I wanted to hit the highlights on, unless there's any questions. And then I will turn it over to Crystal for a few updates. Fast and comprehensive, but quiet today. All right, Crystal.
So I'll also be very brief in my comments. First, very happy to officially join the Trauma Commission in this role. Again, like Liz said, I've been working in and around Region 10 for the last 20 years. This will be my 20th year in EMS. And I've done a lot of background in education. So several of the things that I'll be focusing on initially, March 1st, we've got the RTAC coordinators are turning in their regional educational needs assessment. And that's something that I'll be presenting to this group as well. Are the results of that. Hopefully we have kind of a more comprehensive understanding about what the needs are. Specifically, this assessment was for pre-hospital medicine, so where are the gaps in information that hopefully we can fill in. So I'll be providing you guys with a report for that. I'm very nervous about taking over Stop the Bleed from Gabby. She's done a lot of work with that program. And I think that we've got a lot of really great results out of it and a lot of push in the regions. And hopefully that program continues to serve not only to provide the kits and the training to people, but an opportunity to work more closely and maybe provide some other skills to these groups as well. And then finally, I hope to work with GIMSA to continue their efforts in trauma education. So I've talked to Courtney already and hopefully going to work with him on some projects. And if there's anything else that comes up, I'd really like to be engaged in those things. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know what I can do to support whatever programs you have going on. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Liz. So I guess, what about the budget committee since Regina couldn't be here?
Yeah, we'll go into that. Yep.
Are you gonna do that or
Yep.
somebody else?
Katie, you want to start it?
Yes, I can start it. This is Regina's committee report. She went over the super speeder, which I'll go through the presentation here in just a second and show you that the registry startup grant, there does not need to be any action on that. There will be a vote on the reallocation plan. This is the initial reallocation plan. We will have a final one once we have projections and everything put in, but this is just the initial of items that we need to reallocate. And I'll go through that in just a second as well. We also have the FY 25 working draft budget, and that is exactly what it is. It is a draft. It will change. Once we get the report back through the governor's office, we have the initial governor's office report, but that's before the House and the Senate. So there will be changes to it. The ACS verification date extension due to the backlogs with the ACS, the date for full verification for level 3 centers was discussed. No vote was taken on the extension. More information to come. Liz, do you have anything on that that you want to?
Yeah, I think Dr. Patterson will be discussing that in his report, and that the level 3, level 4 committee will be making a recommendation on that.
Okay, perfect. We'll move into the other reports. Oh, this is the expense to budget report. This shows where we're at through December. We should be about halfway through, which everything is showing there. If not, there is a reason why, but everything pretty much is in line there. You have any questions? I'm not going to go line by line.
Yep.
The trauma centers they are at 11%, but just remember we have biannual invoicing now, so it's only twice a year. So that's why it's at 11%. But the next report you'll see it'll be a significant amount because we've already processed those invoices in January.
I just want to say the tremendous amount of work that goes in to keeping this up, because Katie runs QuickBooks in the background. So we don't have to rely on a general ledger, which is often behind because, as you all know, it takes a while for invoices and things to process. So this is really the most up-to-date, up-to-minute.
Real time.
Yeah.
Yes. The next one is the initial reallocation plan. This has gone through the budget committee. They have voted to approve it. Like I said, this is just the initial. We will have another one because if you notice the remaining total at the bottom, the 1.6, that still needs to be reallocated at this point, but we will include that in the final reallocation amount. And that is the fireworks revenue that came in at 1.7, as well as some other items that we are going to reallocate. One being the office telephone. We talked about going through the government server. We're not going to do that this year. We have another option that we can go through that's not as costly. But for 24, we're going to go ahead and reallocate those funds. Under system development, we did not have a stop the bleed coordinator for 24, so we're going to reallocate those funds, as well as Region 1 not being in there the full time for 24. The GQuit funds, those were reallocated from FY 23 unspent funds, so we need to reallocate the FY 24 funds. And then the RTAC website, we had a cost difference on that, so that makes up the 96,000. Then the remaining amount, the EMS equipment grant remaining funds, those were already voted on by the EMS committee, so those are taken care of. They're also included in the initial reallocation proposal at the bottom. I want to take a minute to look over those proposal items that were voted on by the budget committee, and then we can have a vote on this plan.
I just wanted to say something about the telephone service. That was actually a recommendation by DPHIT. It wasn't like we showed, are choosing not to go on a government server. They just said we simply don't need to pay the huge, we don't have we have like less than 1,000 square feet of office space. We don't need these big heavy duty repeaters and stuff. They said just go with an AT&T business or even personal. It doesn't have to be a government.
So we're saving money.
Yeah, we're saving money.
I'm all about that.
Are there any other questions on the proposal items below?
Do you need a motion?
Yes, we wanted.
I would.
It's coming from-
Oh, we don't have to have no vote? Okay,
You vote.
It's coming from the committee.
okay, so no vote, okay.
Well, no, we don't need a motion.
We don't need a
Still need a
motion, but you
motion.
need a
Still
vote.
We need a-
vote.
we need a vote.
Okay.
You don't need a motion.
We need a vote on it, but no motion. Okay, any discussion then? All right, all those in favor, aye. Opposed? And as Katie said, more to follow from the budget. This is just getting started.
Initial.
This is the first par A or 4A, whatever it is. First serve. Okay.
All right, the next item up is the FY 25 draft working budget. The budget committee wanted to be sure that you know this is draft. It is working. We have a call on Monday to go through some of the proposals for FY 25. So all of this is completely rough draft. Even the 24 column, that will be subject to change with the actual count or totals for those departments for the fiscal year. Nothing is needed on that. All right, we'll move into the super speeder revenue summary. The first slide is the revenue to budget comparison. The next one is the FY 23 to FY 24. Took a slight dip in January. And just remember, the super speeder is when the tickets are paid, not when they're given. Not based on what's given, it's just based on what is being paid at that time.
Out of curiosity, what was that spike in May of last year? Do we know, or?
It's
obviously
just
we
when
don't
they're
know?
paid. Yeah.
Interesting. That's just a-
My
It is
guess
strange.
is income tax came in and people paid their tickets. Because you can see this, I mean, that happens each year. It's
Every year
around
May is a
May.
spike.
I mean, they have to pay a reinstatement fee because their license is technically suspended.
Right.
Ask
So
me
it's
how
not
I
when we
know
get paid.
this.
it's when the state gets paid.
That's when the state gets paid.
Ask me how I know
Yes.
this.
Did you take a bus to, did you take a bus today?
I
Is
said
that
we
what
need to
the
drive
problem
her
was?
home, is what you're saying.
Not today.
But that's how we supported the commission.
I'm giving like that.
Right, the next slide just shows the cumulative total from 22 to 24. We are still above, just slightly down for January. The next item is the governor's budget report recommendation. We included that in there. It is the 23 million. There was an additional million that was put in for the super speeder revenue. The changes for AFY on the next slide show a increase in salary support for full-time employees.
That was the, you may have heard about, or before the holidays, the governor announced a one-time bonus for all state employees. So they put that in the amended.
Yes. The FY 25 changes include a 4% cost of living, the increase in super speeder revenue, and reinstatement collections. They do a true up that you will see, and that's the recommended change.
And you'll notice the firework revenue doesn't even go through this process. It's just a transfer from that firework trust fund over to our trust fund. So you don't even see it.
It goes to the Department of Revenue now.
So we're handling that with the reallocation plan, because that's usually when Katie gets noticed that the transfer is going to occur.
So we still have in the bag for the money that's out.
No.
No. Okay.
I mean, it still goes through this process, but it's put, we don't have to go up at amended time, and it's it's automatically put in the full fiscal year budget, not in the amended budget.
Just not put in at the base time.
Yeah.
That's all I have. If there are no questions.
Thank you, Katie, for stepping in.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Channeling your inner Dr. Medeiros.
Yeah.
That's good.
And thanks for keeping such tight reins on your own accounting system for the state. We always know what's going on. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into the EMS committee report. Courtney?
I'll start off with the legislation that Liz was talking about a few minutes ago when Senator Hatch, they had a Senate study committee on healthcare workforce, and Liz spoke, as did Chad Black from GIMSA, about the EMS. Well, she spoke on the trauma issue.
And the legislation's in your packet, in your folder. It's on the right side.
I'm not entirely sure that's the current version. I think there's been a couple of changes, but
We printed it out, the
Okay,
last one that we,
good,
oh,
good.
you're right. You know what? There probably were some changes to this, but that that amended one has not been dropped yet. So as soon as we get it dropped.
So essentially, one of the things that came out of that was the fact that across the board, healthcare workforce is in desperate shape, including the EMS profession. But I think one of the things that Liz pointed out and Chad reiterated, the troubles that we have because of workforce getting immediate transportation from rural centers or from smaller centers to tertiary centers. And that has come up in several different arenas, most notably the rural focus that the American College of Surgeons did. And then Senator Hatchett reached out to Chad and Liz about, can we propose legislation to help with that? So this is what this legislation hopefully will do. It would be a pilot project that would initially place ambulances in rural Georgia to help meet that need. There's three different concepts the way I'm reading it, understanding it. I've been involved in some of the conference calls, but one would be maybe to utilize air ambulances as a different resource. Right now, if you've got a helicopter in South Georgia and you got a thunderstorm going on, they're sitting there, they can't fly. So one concept would be give them an ambulance. So if you've got a dedicated crew there, if they can't fly, then they could go get that person in that ambulance and do the transportation. The other concepts are putting ambulances in rural, embed them in rural services that are already there with the concept that they would have staffing and equipment to go make those transports. I've got some, if you read the bill, I've got some angst with some of the terminology. And the terminology is based a lot on CMS terminology. And CMS generally doesn't look at a hospital transport as an emergent call. That's just the way they look at it. Obviously, if you got somebody in Emmanuel County that's got a gunshot wound and they got a critical car crash and they're bleeding out, that's an emergent. So my goal is so that we don't cross up with our friends at CMS and confuse the issue, that change that wording to time critical or time sensitive. So that I don't want people anywhere in the state to think that we're putting these ambulances out there to take routine, non-emergent transport, so it's not time sensitive. I would prefer us not to get in that business. So that there's two things going on. One is that the bill has to pass to set up a pilot program, and then there will have to be money put in to fund that. And then, quite frankly, the hard part, trying to figure out how much money it will take to do that, because depending on how you staff it, that dollar amount will be a bit variable. Did I say that right, Liz?
You did. Mhm.
Do you know, Courtney, I mean, that's really exciting news.
Yes.
And I think really on to hitting the problem. Who will be in charge of oversight of the project or the program? Will the commission have anything to do with that, or will there be another entity, or how? Need somebody to oversee it and make sure it works.
It's my understanding that the commission would be a lead agency on that. I think there will be other people involved. I have some angst about some of it. I would like to make sure that there's a medical review committee at some point that has both EMS people
Exactly.
and physicians on it. So
That's a
when
great
we
point.
pull that crew off and make that transport, then we can look at, did it work? Or was it needed? Was the crew trained appropriately, equipped appropriately? All of those things, because the whole idea of this is to learn from this pilot project. And the more we learn, the more we can fine tune this over the years. Because it'll only be in one North Georgia county and one South Georgia, or one North Georgia region, one South Georgia region. So obviously that's not cover all the geography. So, but if we can use that pilot and gain the appropriate information so that now we know how often it's needed and how much it costs to provide that. Because again, your point about readiness cost, while they're sitting there not working, it's readiness cost. Exactly. There's no revenue coming in until you start rolling wheels.
Well, we need to make sure that it's funded, because you and I have talked about you get paid, you not get paid, and for this, that stuff needs to go out the window, and we need to make sure readiness costs, we could build a table, this is a readiness cost for EMS, is exactly what we need to do. So this would be huge pilot data. I hope we are closely involved, because we will know how to set it up and make sure that we track the right thing.
Yeah.
So that we know exactly when we get done, how much it costs you, how much you need, how many lives we saved, how long our transport times were. So this could be really good.
Yeah, I really think that it will probably be here because we have a little bit better flexibility about handling funds and this sort of thing than some other folks do. And there's issues about, how long does it take to get an ambulance? If we end up buying a new ambulance and order it today, the project will be over before the ambulance is delivered. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked out, so.
And do we know do we have places where we're thinking on where that ambulance would be stored?
It would be Region 2 and Region 8. Region 2 is the Gainesville area, and Region 8 is Southwest Georgia.
Okay.
Courtney, is your, is solely the interfacility non-emergency transfers? That's the one you're.
Yeah, there's twice, I think it's twice in there, it talks about non-emergent.
Yeah.
And I don't want the facilities or the local EMS to think, well, there is one train of thought that says, if they handle the non-emergencies, then my crew will be ready for the emergencies. Yeah, two things there. One is there's a lot of people who make their money doing routine non-emergencies. And if we take their revenue away from them, they may go away, which would be a bad outcome because they're necessary. So I don't want to harm them in a financial way. The other thing is that I talked to a helicopter guy the other day and he said, they're killing us. I said, what do you mean they're killing us? He said, we're flying stuff that we shouldn't be flying. We're flying injuries that might not even need an ambulance.
Yep.
And they're tying up the most expensive transportation mode on God's earth.
I can see that.
And the most dangerous transportation mode on God's earth is air helicopter. So we got to find a way to police that. And when you're looking at a rural hospital that's got Aunt Sally there with a broke hip, it's not an emergent. And she may have surgery tomorrow, next day, but they can't get her out. Then they check emergent, call a helicopter and away to go because they can't find resources.
That happens daily at our hospital.
It does.
That we get a helicopter for a broken tibia.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
With a pulse.
Yeah, with a pulse. Oh, yeah. A closed broken tibia that's been sitting there for 18 hours at our outside hospital. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of
So
that's
that's,
helicopters.
I'm sorry?
Some of that's probably financing driven by the helicopter services also.
Yeah.
I mean, lucrative to them, not to be difficult.
well, the helicopter people don't want to be tied up with that because they really want to do what they're there to do. And now with the helicopters covered under balanced billing now, that the federal law, the only thing the federal law didn't cover was ground ambulances, okay? So now when a helicopter flies somebody like that, they've got to negotiate with the insurance company on what they get paid. So it's not like it was before. So they're less likely to want to do that. But, the hospital calls them, so we've got this, and this. And sometimes when they land, guess what? It's not that. And so you're putting the helicopter crew in direct competition or direct conflict with the physician in the ED and the nurse in the ED. And so they end up flying.
This is almost a separate issue because some of the helicopter companies are selling insurance and they'll, land in your backyard and take you to the hospital if you've got a cough. So, I mean, this is a little bit more complex issue than I think we're laying it out as.
I will tell you, I don't know if you watch Lawmakers, but you can probably go back. I think it was the second issue. They had two senators on Lawmakers, both of them talking about EMS issues. One of them was in a hospital that needed transportation for immediate calf, and 6 hours later, he realized that he had the same insurance that Dr. Gunn's speaking of. He hadn't called a helicopter that flew, okay? The other one laid on the side of the road in a community for an extraordinary period, a longer period of time than he should have. Ambulance got there, took him to the hospital. He stayed on the wall for 2 hours. So the interesting thing is, and he was upset about he was upset about both, obviously. But for 2 hours, that ambulance that could have been out taking care of him was on the wall at the hospital. So, and it is a domino effect or cascading effect. It's difficult. So.
Are there other states that have done something similar to this?
No, but not that I'm aware of. There's some that have done some stuff with diversion. I think wall time may be the new diversion. And what you're seeing is that some of it is staffing and some of it is just a huge volume of things going on. I know you probably see it every day.
Yeah.
Folks coming to the
Yeah.
ED that
All
have
kinds
no
of things in
business
place to try to get them off the
ED.
wall as quick as we can.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if it was, this pilot program is like the first in the country or if we're.
I don't know, I don't know of any other in the country like this, but that's a good question I can ask you folks.
Corey, how expensive does the program intend or hope to be after the pilot's completed? Now, we talk about the rural, and I appreciate those problems, but, even from Henry to get to Grady, which is 28 miles, is sometimes a 4.5 hour wait to find an ambulance, and we're in back to trucks.
Yeah.
We could put them in my car and get them there much quicker. So, we're taking much more penetrating in severe trauma, now that we're stabilizing and packing and trying to get to a higher level of definitive care, but we're running the same problem. So will there be hopefully an expansion into not just rural? I don't really consider us rural anymore since we're on 28 miles, but we get the phone calls on Friday night saying we don't have anybody till Sunday. So
sure.
Are there the end result is an expansion into all regions, kind of all levels, or is this really going to be a true focus rural with a big problem?
Yeah, at least from my standpoint, it eventually should encompass the entire state. I'm living in rural Georgia, so I got a little bit better handle on the issues there. And I'll talk in a minute about some study work we're doing about trying to figure out the entire scope of the problem, at least in rural Georgia, that we're focusing on. But yeah, I think obviously anybody that has those issues with time-sensitive transport, we got to figure that out. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. We just struggle with it too, and we appreciate the rural. We don't want to be there either.
Yeah.
But we just wondered if it would expand into the city.
So I'll give you a rundown on what some of the stuff that we're working on. The EMS education piece, we continue to do a lot of EMS training. Most of that's through GIMSA. But one of the things that we looked at, I was on the governor's healthcare workforce task force, and one of the things that was pointed out was how many people start in the EMS training and nursing training who never end up with a license. In nursing, they have a huge dropout rate or loss there. EMS is a tremendous problem with the pass rates, at least to my view of that. We are going to be working with Richard in state office to look at the pass rates and talking to some of the nursing people. They take a thing called ATI, which is kind of a prep thing to train with, to find out how they're going to do and give them some indication what they need to study for. But we're going to look at that sort of thing and see if there's ways we can help the local EMS educator be more successful with their students. Inter-hospital transportation, we are still trying to get the survey instrument done. And we're working with Mercer there and reached back out to them because we had what I thought was the final draft thing, and turns out the lady who was in charge of it at Mercer at the Rural Innovation Center, she moved on to a different position. So they're now getting back to that. So essentially that is an instrument that we're going to ask the rural hospitals to tell us what kind of issues they have, not only with transportation, but with training and equipment on how they handle trauma. I say that right. When Liz backs up and starts looking, eyeballing me, I said, oh God, what have I done now? But that's ongoing. And I talked to Kim Littleton this morning they are going to give us a written report from their 10 town hall meetings on what EMS barriers are to doing that immediate transportation piece. So I hope in the very near future, actually have some fairly hard data about what our barriers are. And I think this will may go a long ways to helping that legislation figure out what we need to do to overcome some of those barriers. We are working with Dr. Bulger's group, and I talked to Kelly, and we've talked a little bit. It's a little odd because we're trying to see if we can define an EMS station. And that seems like, well, gosh, seemed like an easy thing to do, but some EMS stations have ambulances in with medics and transportation capabilities. Some of them are fire medical first responders that have people go out and help, which is great. And then go up and begin that initial care to change the outcome of the patient, but they don't have transportation capabilities. So, and then there's a third category that is a little odd, that it's not odd to them, it's not my way of doing business in rural Georgia, but they have status system management where they don't really have a station. They move that ambulance around based on what their perceived volume is. So that's where we're at right at the moment for that project. But Dr. Ashley, to your point, we are having some discussions about what's the readiness cost for EMS. And that I hope to be able to tag in, CMS has actually started this project, and they call it a cost report. And there are several counties in Georgia who have gone through this, and I'm hoping to work with ACCG to see if we can look at their data, because the CMS is wanting to know how much it costs to run an ambulance service. And my terror is, and I've talked to the ACC about this several years ago, is that they're going to say, well, here's our budget. This is how much it costs to run an ambulance service.
No, you don't want that.
That's
Yeah.
nowhere near
Don't
what
want
it costs
that.
to run an ambulance service.
Right.
And they're nowhere near, because there's so many peripherals that cost them money that they pay for under other budgets. So I hope to be able to look at some of those and maybe refine those. And we may work with the University of Georgia group to give us some good data and some credibility for that.
You could do exactly what we did with our survey for the trauma centers and keep it very tight. And then you don't take on extraneous things like some place has a county commission that throws a lot of money, some place it doesn't. That's not, you're right on target. That's not your cost. Your costs are your costs.
Yep.
And you can, that's huge. And you know,
Well, you
Eileen
always say
Bulger,
fixed cost, Courtney, that's what it is,
Yeah.
because that's how we're educating folks.
But what we have, Manual County, if you ACCG, Dave Brill and I had a discussion about, he said, "We got that data." I said, "No, you don't." He said, "Sure we do. We get it, a unified accounting process or whatever." So you don't have it. I said, "What you have from Emmanuel County is what they pay the hospital."
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you consider that budget plus. It doesn't include maintenance, doesn't include insurance, it doesn't include fuel that the county divides. All of those things come out under different budgets, but it's all a cost of providing the ambulance service.
Courtney, what you could do is get all your folks, if you want to do it as a region, or if you want to do it as a whole state. I mean, there's a lot of you all, you know, how you do it, but we got the trauma medical directors and program managers and finance officers in a room. Fewer numbers, at that time, I'll be 20 groups, and went through the things you have to have in the book, and agreed to assign a cost to it, but within fair rules. And you could do the same with your community and say, like you mentioned, maintenance. Well, that could be $1 million or $100, depending on how well you fill out the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But you could set up a rule like, this is what we will allow, you know, routine tire, rotation, routine spark plugs, blah, blah, blah. And so if you did that, then regardless of what the county commission is doing, you would have your own data that you could take, this is what our true costs are, and they're conservative.
Well, and the other thing I'm hoping to look at is if CMS has got the different data, and we can put that together and look at the ranges. There's obviously going to be some that spend a huge amount of money on EMS, some who spend nothing, and then start comparing what they put into that budget.
Yeah.
So
What you want to come up with is what's fair and allowable that we all agree to.
that,
And then it has a rubber stamp on it.
Mhm.
That's huge. You know, Dr. Bulger, I would use her. Did you say you're using her to help you with that? Or I'd
Well-
consult her on it and ask her about it. She'd be pretty sharp on that, I would
Yeah.
think.
well, we've been doing business with her and, again, the thing I was talking about a while ago with the mapping project,
Mhm.
we kind of got bogged down in trying to figure out, and we got a county up there that's got more EMS stations than it got ambulances.
Mhm.
So I was scratching my head about that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to work all through that, but yeah, I think she'd give us a lot of good information.
I mean, use her, if you need more funding for her for consultation fees or what, I mean, she's a great resource and, her name would carry a lot of weight with CMS or whoever you're working with, so.
I think if we could get her with some leadership skills and University of Georgia with let them run their abacus, I think that might be a good partnership.
And she would be good for this as a consultant on this pilot project you're talking about with the ambulance up north and the ambulance down south with the pilot projects. I think she would be very smart
Well,
on
that's
that
a great
too.
idea. We need to bring her in.
I would
Mhm.
fully support bringing her in and an advisory role. You still maintain control or whoever's going to maintain control. I hope the commission is really involved heavily because we just have a way of organizing data and presenting data and publishing data that would help make sure when we get to the finish line, we've got a strong product.
And we have a good repertoire of physicians who can be involved in looking at that case and say, well, yeah, that was a true emergent time
Sure,
sensitive case
yeah.
versus a closed tibia that,
Right, with a pulse, right?
yeah.
And I do that. I just did that yesterday with my PI coordinator, looking at all my transfer outs. And I have to classify them, are they urgent or non-emergent? Non-emergent, just because whatever, that one bucket, but then the emergent that took too long, that's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother bucket I have to monitor. So I'm sure all the trauma centers are doing that. There's a way to do that. So you're exactly right. You have to have the medical teams involved with EMS at the hospitals.
And at least in those cases, I think that utilize that system, assuming that the bill passes and it gets funded, then at least in those cases, we will have very good data on time from initial injury to the definitive care.
Mhm. Very good.
I'll answer questions if you got them.
Just one real quick, this survey regarding transportation, to figure out what the issues are. I think some of the issues are obvious, right? Personnel and equipment. So you don't have EMS and you don't have ambulances. So what other information are we looking for from that survey to help answer that question?
Well, I think it's not as obvious as you think.
Okay.
We've got several counties out there that the county government has contracts with ambulance providers to provide ambulance service in their county. Unless, of course, you're sick in the hospital or you have gunshot wound in the hospital, and then they don't provide that service. They may have 4 or 5 ambulances at the station, but they won't send a crew to get that patient and take them to your hospital.
Okay.
So you have all the rights of a citizen until you enter the doors of the hospital, and then you don't. So I'm trying to figure out how often that happens.
Okay.
I know one hospital is paying, I'm told $600,000 a year to have an ambulance parked in the parking lot to make those transfers. So that sort of thing we're trying to get a handle on.
Okay.
Yeah,
That helps.
yeah,
That helps.
A lot of it, you're right, is personnel.
Right.
It's interesting. Say it, Courtney.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you. I'm sorry it took so long.
No, good work. Really exciting report from EMS subcommittee, so. All right, we'll move into the level 3 and level 4 rural trauma center. Is that going to be online, Liz?
Yes, sir.
Patterson and Dr. Register, or one or both?
I think it's just me, sir. I appreciate the time for the Georgia Trauma Commission to listen to our subcommittee report for the level 3 and level 4 centers. Our last meeting was in January. I'm sorry, January 19th. And you have our report there. We are continuing to work on the March Pause project with Courtney. It is currently in the video development phase where we're going to be videoing the pre-course modules to be able to be accessed from any of the just a standard computer on the internet, and that will assist basically in the course itself and then the on-site course, hopefully, or at least some version of that in the future. So we hope to have that working model done by the summer. And Mercer is helping us with the video development per se. Ongoing ACS trauma system consultation, the rural focus site development. You've already heard, I think several times mentioned this morning, the Senate Study Committee on Rural Healthcare Provider Recruitment has kind of sparked some solutions for EMS transport, and I won't belabor that point, but I know that Courtney's already talked about a little bit later today, but that's one of the things that is a big importance to us, is being able to get these patients out of the emergency rooms or the hospitals when we need to get them to other centers that have higher level of care. Ongoing project is access to specialty care, which that survey is finalized. We do that once a year to be able to update the rural centers in Georgia about where more complex care is provided at that point, such as ECMO, replant, cardiac services, et cetera, to get them to have the right person to call fairly quick that would be close to them. And that's usually on the website, and usually we provide a QR code at one of our meetings for that they can use to access that list. We have also started on a PI project specific to the level 3 and level 4 centers, and that's a PI process and mentorship program. Rachel Hand and Christina Mathis are working through this project. We actually have our first, I think, call meeting scheduled for the 21st of this month. And they've actually put together a Excel spreadsheet on trying to match centers so that the level 4, for instance, would have a level 4 friend, and then they would have a level 3 friend in their region, and then ultimately a level 1 or 2 mentor that they could call and try to establish kind of a, if you will, a spider web network across the state of friends and colleagues that you can call and for mentor processes, but also to help you with PI projects, which tends to be one of the hardest things for the level 3 and level 4 centers to grasp. Do have one thing that we would like to bring to the commission for potential motion for consideration, and that is currently with the GTC contract deliverables for the level 3 trauma centers. It says you need to maintain and achieve ACS verification by June 30th, 2025. Now, due to COVID and other issues, I know we were affected with our consultative visit was pushed back almost a year. ACS is currently scheduling consultative and verification visits right now at this point, the last time we checked last week, July to December of 2025. And this means that really, if you scheduled a visit, if you had a consultative visit last October, they really don't want to entertain a verification visit until 1 year plus 1 month afterwards. So you would have a consultative visit, a verification visit no sooner than November, which right now from a scheduling standpoint is almost impossible to get because they're filling up so fast. So what we would like to see if the commission would allow us to change or extend that date from June 30th, 2025 to June 30th, 2026 to allow newer centers that are coming online to be able to get their consultative visit, but also squeeze in their verification visit prior to that date at this point. So that's one of the things we would like to have the commission look at. And that's my entire report. So our next meeting is April 19th of this year.
All right, thank you, Greg. Nice report, a lot of good work. So coming from a committee, we don't need a motion. It's open for discussion from the other members. Any?
I wanted to ask, we have a bleacher, but we have a level 3, a newer level 3 in the audience. Jay,
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, so we just met, we're fortunate, we hired a trauma surgical group called SAMG. It's a surgical contract group that comes in, and they have their own trauma program manager that works there. So we met with her again yesterday to approach ACS on verification And we laid out a timeline, and we're even having trouble kind of even sneaking it into the 26th year. You know, if we're scheduling a complicated visit, you know, July, August of this upcoming year, you know, we're at best July, August for a verification, August, September of a verification visit the subsequent year, which would put us potentially outside of windows. So it's still backed up. She's having trouble at all their 20 centers that she helps support. So I think that even the June 26 is mildly aggressive to try to get there for some of the newer centers. We're trying to build programs, and you know we're really at the novice level starting to build this stuff. So that's kind of our concern. There was a lot of discussion on the call. I think all of us, we would have voted unanimously at the time to say yes, extend it, because we're all feeling the same concerns about being able to meet the requirements for the state.
Yeah, I think the problem is that, to your point, we don't have control over when those visits occur. The only thing that we could potentially have control over is when the application is submitted. So maybe our deadline should be related to when the application is submitted, not when the actual visit occurs. So that at least there's evidence that the process is
It's moving in, yeah, and moving in the right direction,
Right.
sure.
And for centers like Piedmont, Henry, who are newer, I think that's a great thing. Like we could do, just like we did back in 2018 with the outset, is to say the application has to be submitted, but for the current centers, I did reach out to Molly. I have not heard back from her yet to say, of the existing centers, what is your best time frame? I think if you all pass the motion, we can then deal with it later, but at least get it off the books for 2025, if that makes sense, or push it.
I think I think we need to push it back, like Dr. Patterson's talking about, because for all the reasons that have been mentioned here. And then I think, why don't we do that sort of as an emergency stopgap? Like, let's just do that and get that going so everybody can relax. And then to take in the comments about the new centers, which is a whole different discussion. They need time to make sure, so, because we want everybody to be successful. So why don't we kick that back to their committee to discuss and come back with a recommendation? How much time do you need? And then we can do another motion next time. So that's
good. We didn't entertain this suggestion, but that's probably, we don't want our wheels to stall. I mean, there should be some pressure on us to continue to move forward.
Right.
If you give us 2029, we're going to start 2028. I mean, you know, that's just the way the world. So I think that having some incentive to move forward with application drop, you know, your submission, whatever it happens to be, it probably was something we didn't talk about, but next year.
I don't want to make just off the cuff without knowing all the details about existing, non-existing, new. But so I think Greg's motion, we should vote on and accept. I'm giving my opinion. And then I think we should kick it back to the rural committee, Dr. Patterson, for
Yes,
you
sir.
all to discuss these new findings and discussions about, is there another motion that needs to take place for new centers coming on? Is this enough time for them? And then if you feel like you need something else, bring that back next meeting and we'll vote on that too.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that fair?
Yes, sir.
Because our goal is for everybody to be successful. We've done this very slowly. It's been a huge success of the state,
We're
and
about to publish.
we're about to publish. So we sent this into the AAST, and what was it, 92% success on the ones and twos, right? So we've gone slow, we've been successful, and that's the goal, to get everybody there in a reasonable amount of time and not hurt anybody. So you've heard it publicly, that's our goal. We want everyone to be successful, so. Yeah, Courtney.
It's just a parliamentarian type of issue. Dr. Patterson's not a member of the body, so I would make a motion to do this. And
Okay.
suggest you get a second, because if somebody came back and gave us some grief, and I don't think anybody would, but
No, thank you for pointing that out. So Courtney will make the motion
And I'll second it.
and Dr. Dunn second, so we're open for any further discussion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Greg, that passes, so let everybody take a sigh of relief. And then if you, in your next meeting, your discussions, if there needs to be another motion or more time, or you all look at the data, bring back a reasonable suggestion.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the commission and yourself. Thank you very much.
Let everybody know we appreciate them and all the good work, and that our goal is to make them successful, okay?
We will, sir.
And
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
There's no deadline with the motion we just got.
What?
There's no deadline now.
Yes,
They'll
there
bring
is.
No, the
back-
deadline is June of 2026. Is what
Yeah,
the motion
whatever he
was.
just said, he had a deadline. It was
June 30th, 2026.
June 30th, 2026. But I've asked him to dive into that further if there's some center, new one just came on or something that needs more time for them to bring back another motion if they need it. I just didn't want to do that off the fly without having
Somebody
the
look at
data
it.
and, you know. All right, we'll move into the Georgia Committee for Trauma Excellence. Tracy, are you on the?
I
on the
am.
aisle?
I am on. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you. Our owl is very loud today, so.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah, you can talk
Well,
in your
you know-
angelic voice and it's still loud.
You're
It's,
so,
it's not you, it's just- Al is very loud today, so even I can hear it in my half deaf ear. Okay. Go ahead. We're just having fun.
okay. The first item on our report has already been kind of referred to a little bit in Katie's report, that we have an AIS 2008 course that's being funded by the commission, and we thank you for that. The image trend data dictionary was completed and presented to centers. And the registry PowerPoints were uploaded to Basecamp, which is a place that you can get the slides to show, because I think Kelly Vaughn was mentioning that some of the surveyors are wanting proof of some of the things that the registrars do. What's the type of continuing education they get? Because those are things you have to show, you know, as far as hours and stuff. Education, we're developing a TPM toolkit, and it's going to be good for new trauma program managers and also for those that have been in the role a while, just to kind of remind you. And we want to make sure, you know, that there are different competency levels. So TCAA came out with an outline, and we are using that along with some information that Wellstar has put together. And we've got a lot of good input on that and start. And then also a basic trauma nursing skills outline, and trying to incorporate our STN slides that are each center should have access to train nurses and do education. The PI committee, we've got a new co-chair there. Karen Husk, was the co-chair. She has retired. So we've got a level 3 manager, Ashley Bullington, who has stepped up to co-chair with Rama Stevens, who is at a level 2 in Atlanta. And so we've not had a meeting since, I think, October, November, but we're looking at time to definitive care. And part of that review is we gathered about 40 articles related to trauma transfer or transfer best practice, you know, in other hospital populations, and looking at if there were things that we could develop to say, here's a toolkit, and this is some actions you could take to decrease your ED length of stay or time to definitive care. And then we're discussing maybe a transfer feedback template. That's something, you know, some centers send a letter, and sometimes it's 2 or 3 months later. I know at Navicent, we're down a couple of positions, so we're doing this verbally with some of the smaller hospitals, but it's working out. We want to make sure that we cover what the standards request, which they also, in the standards, they want us to look at the pre-hospital care. Did the hospital who transferred the patient to us do the right thing and in a timely manner? So we could help mentor in that way, or touch base with that. And something that we do at Navicent is we look at PowerShare and make sure that they send us images and things. So those are things that we might put on a transfer feedback template. Centers don't have to use it. They don't have to use that process. But again, it's a toolkit where they can look at it and take suggestions and try to improve their program. We did have a level 4 audit tool webinar back in October. It was well attended and received. And we need to get some follow-up on that survey. And I've already mentioned about Karen Huston, Ashley Bullington. Injury prevention, there was a virtual Stop the Bleed with over 500 participants in January. Bingo size renewal license bought by the Middle Georgia Regional Commission. And there's ongoing refresher training for initial instructors. The state, we're kind of injury prevention committee is very active and supplies a lot of things to hospitals so that you can use this information and put it out under your own hospital branding. But, you know, some places use it in their social media and some just within the hospital. But hypothermia education was shared with EMS and hospital partners, and ATV safety webinar was held at Memorial Health. For PEDS, they're working with education PI committee, they've done some literature review. So some of our transfer literature articles were about pediatrics, and CHOA receives a high percentage of transfers in. So that's going to be interesting. They're still pending on the whole blood study. That's going to be a national study about using whole blood in pediatric trauma. They anticipate startup sometime this fall. And they continue to participate with the state committee on PEDS readiness. We have no recommendations or motions for consideration. We have a lot of participation. We had our last GCTE meeting last week, and we had over 137 participants. And I think that's probably one of the highest attendance numbers I've seen in a while. We go over committee reports or subcommittee reports like I just presented to you, and we're also slowly going through the new standards. So at this last meeting, we went through 5 standards that apply to radiology from the 22 December book. And that's my report. Any questions?
Any questions for Tracy?
I do, Tracy. On your injury prevention, you've got a line there, hypothermia education shared with EMS and hospital partners. I'm not familiar with that. How did y'all send that out?
I think it would probably be best if you talk to Crystal and find out. I think usually they send it out to the hospital partners. I'm not sure how they distribute to EMS partners. So I think that's something that's going to be worked on through the RTACs too. So if it didn't get to you, I apologize. We are talking about like each RTAC is going to have an injury prevention calendar that we hope one day that will feed up to a state calendar that you can look at. But I think that would have to be asked from either Crystal or the RTAC group.
She usually does a social media blast through the Region 5 RTAC account that she has, but so I don't know if there's another way that it gets to you or not, that it gets to EMS or not, but we could ask.
Okay, Tracy, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for a report. A lot of good work.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move into, before we go to break, we have one more presentation, the Rehabilitation Committee by Dr. Vox.
And that Dr. Vox's report is in your blue folders on the left-hand side.
Blue folder. Okay. Dr. Vox, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Go
ahead.
So to update you guys on our last couple of meetings with the rehab committee, we continue on with some of the projects that we previously discussed with the committee previously, with the commission previously. We had discussed the fact that obviously we're starting to dig into some of our data with regards to discharge disposition and rehabilitation access. Liz shared with the committee an interesting report from TQIP that demonstrates that actually Georgia on average is referring fewer of certain key categories of its trauma patients to inpatient rehabilitation, something we suspected and that's likely to be reflected in our own analyses. But traumatic brain injuries in particular were in there, other types of injuries, including blunt trauma and so forth. And we're seeing more patients being discharged directly home without rehabilitation resources. We had previously engaged the committee's fellow, Dr. M. Lavin, for some of the initial analysis that I think I shared with you guys at the last meeting. Now, additionally, Shepherd Center has allocated additional focus staff time from its research department, specifically in the person of Dr. Rada Anderson. Dr. Anderson is with us today, and I'm going to bring her on just a minute just to kind of give you guys an overview of the types of things that we're going to be able to talk about perhaps by the next commission meeting. In addition, this committee is going to be reaching out to every rehabilitation center in the state that we can identify with a survey of their capacities and so forth. And that's something that will result in hopefully a handy guide that individual trauma hospitals and trauma systems will be able to see who can kind of best do what around the state. We continue to develop the survey with regards to engaging with trauma teams about what they see as some of the rehabilitation access issues in their regions. So introducing Dr. Anderson for a minute, if she can join us.
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Rada Anderson. I am a scientist at Shepherd Center, where I conduct a lot of the advanced statistical analytics that occur across the hospital. Dr. Vox approached me through our ABI research director and asked if I would come on board, as I have a strong background in analytics, obviously, but also my real big area of focus in disability scholarship is understanding underserved populations, especially within a geospatial context. So understanding how rural folk are different in their experiences compared to people who live in urban settings, as well as a sociologist by training, I can deeply understand underserved populations and how their experiences are different. And so our goal is to really build upon the work that's been done that's much of high level descriptive currently. And while that's exceptionally important and helps us understand broad brush strokes, to spend a bit more time thinking about the nuance of subgroups of people, not only by their injury and their geospatial location, but also the underserved populations that they may be representing at a larger, context. So we're in the process of finalizing access to the very rich data. I've been impressed by the volume of data that is there, but we're cutting down to some key factors and then really spending time to intentionally focus on both overall trends, additionally with subgroups as well.
Thank you. Well, I'll open it up for any questions.
Oh, Dr. Vox, that's very exciting. I really appreciate the addition of Dr. Anderson there with data analytics, and that's going to have great infrastructure to, I think, yield a great benefit. So congratulations. I'm excited to hear as you progress down this track to give us more reports.
Yeah.
Any questions for Dr. Vox? Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate it. At this time, why don't we take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 11 a.m. The next committee report is from the Trauma Administrators Committee, Dr. Walker. Dr. Walker, are you online?
I sure am. Good morning, everyone.
Great, we can hear you just fine. Go ahead.
We had a very engaging committee meeting recently. A couple of things you've already heard this morning. We discussed the trauma stabilization proposal, and I think that one pager that Dr. Ashley reviewed with us, so we want to make sure that that gets sent out to all of the administrators so that they can circulate that with their local hospital leaders and any government affairs contacts they may have. We then reviewed the Trauma Center Annual Actual Use Report, which will be required starting in fiscal year 2025. So we wanted to make sure that all of our administrators were aware of how important the information that's going to be provided in that document will be to reflect how the readiness funding is allocated across various categories. And of course, that report will be included in the contracts that go out in June of this year. We then finalized one of the committee dates that we wanted to move based on the fact that it was just things had gotten a little off schedule because the winter GQIP meeting is happening a little later this year. So we decided to move one of our meetings back to August. And then finally, the last two things, we had some committee member participation, I guess, and received some real-time feedback through a Mentimeter app where we collected some feedback regarding the upcoming May TCAA finance workshop. You may recall a couple of years ago at the GQIP meeting, we brought in TCAA and they did a fantastic finance workshop. But since it's been a while, and of course we've had turnover, in our administrators, we think it's time to bring them back. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone, got the most out of the experience. And so we were able to get feedback on kind of the top 3 topics that we wanted to make sure was included in the information. So you see those listed there in regards to charges and fees for trauma activation, how to improve and optimize reimbursement, and then finally some claims examples with activations plus or minus critical care. And then we also received feedback in regards to the plans to apply for GQIP to become a patient safety organization. Many of our facility members have their own or are already a part of a patient safety organization. And so our consultants wanted to understand who was already familiar with the concept, who was already a part of one, and how might that, go into our GQIP patient safety organization. And so the feedback that we got was the majority of our administrators were familiar with or already working with a patient safety organization. So we think that this will be a good, addition and won't take a lot of orientation, at least on the administrator side, in terms of where GQIP is headed with the PSO, excuse me. And that's it. I think our next meeting will happen in May as part of the GQIP meeting, and otherwise, end of report.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Walker and the Administrators Committee? Dr. Walker, thanks for taking over that committee. I know you're new at it, but I'm just looking at the your report out here. I have it in front of me, and it's really a wow moment. The Administrators Committee is. I knew you'd do a good job, but I didn't know you'd go quite that fast. So very, very good, and a lot of positive things. And you can see that for us to move forward, and a lot of the things that we want to do with the state, we really have to have the Administrators Committee involved. So this is really a great roadmap, and I think the TCAA finance workshop to really get all our administrative, our C-suite on board with trauma organization and funding will pay huge benefits. So really great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Dunn, we'll move into the, let me get this right now. I always say Trauma System Performance Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley. Busy time on the Trauma System Performance Committee. We're kind of running in the background is Dr. Eileen Bulger's project that we consulted her for to try to figure out a geospatial mapping of ambulance stations and find out where the ambulance deserts are in the state. And as you heard from the EMS report and other reports, the definition of an EMS station is come into question. You would think it would be a building with an EMS ambulance and an EMS crew. Well, apparently people use that definition differently. So that project is still in the works, trying to figure out those definitions so that we can try to map those things appropriately. I think Courtney adequately addressed those issues and some of the complications with trying to figure out what that means. The armband project started by the Office of EMS and T is ongoing. They used a very small sample, one location to try to, as a pilot project, to try to work out the kinks. There's a lot that goes into the armband project, including education of all the police officers, all the EMS and fire people, the ambulance people, the hospital, where does it go in the registry, where does it go in the outlying hospital, and how to link all those data. They have placed almost over 200 armbands on patients. The unfortunate part about the project is only 2 of those patients were really transfer patients. And our hope was that this armband project could be used for the time to definitive care to help us understand that. And that may or may not be the case. We're going to continue with the armband project. I know I'm sure Kelly will give us more updates on that. But I think we're going to suspend continuous updates, and we're going to give a summary update once the project concludes, once we get all the data in from that. The trauma registry update is continuing. As you know, all the centers in Georgia are on ESO, and the Office of EMS and T is on ImageTrend. So we're trying to download those, getting a patch or a file transfer. I'm learning more and more about trauma registries, more than I ever knew that I needed to know. But so that process is ongoing. There's a couple centers that have encountered issues, but in the most part, I think we've kind of worked out those kinks, and we're able to download data effectively into the ImageTrend so that they can link the EMS and the hospital data. That's the ultimate goal here. I'm sure the Office of EMS and T will give us an update on that as well. In the meantime, as we try to figure out this, holy grail of time to definitive care, Dr. Ashley Shop and my shop went into an IRB protocol to just compare our registries to see if we could come up with just a limited data set of the time to definitive care from 2 level 1 hospitals in the state of Georgia. And even we are having tremendous problems with that. Mainly is the lack of available PCRs from the, I think I said that right, or the EMS trip reports from the scene to the first hospital and from this first hospital to the second hospital. Those are PI coordinators at both shops. I have had a devil of a time trying to find those PCRs so that we can get time on scene and reasons for the delays in transfer. I know from my shop, we only have about 15% of those PCRs from the scene to the first hospital, and about 50 to 60% of the first hospital to the second hospital. And that's after making multiple phone calls with the EMS agencies and just trying to find them. There's a lot of reasons behind that. The system is not well greased to be able to do that. Patient comes in as a John Doe. So trying to go back and trying to find out information on that John Doe or trying to find the PCR for the John Doe is troublesome because you don't know any of their identifying information. So we're working with Dr. Ashley Shop, and we have probably, they have about 3,000 patients. We have about 3,000 patients, but like, again, only about 15% probably have totally complete data. We're hope to give a preliminary report here soon, of just the data that we do have. And then we still have a group of people on both shops that are going in and calling individual EMS agencies and trying to figure out where those missing PCRs are. But that is a very challenging task. Another avenue that we've tried to answer the time to definitive care question is with the help of UGA. Their behavioral health or public health department did a wonderful study, I think is on behavioral health patients, looking at claims databases and being able to understand that concept from a behavioral health standpoint. And so we reached out to them a while ago, or Liz did, and we have engaged their services to try to help us with the trauma side of this, but they have the same problems that they don't necessarily have all the appropriate data that they need to be able to answer that question. So they're trying to reach out to various other data sources to try to help us with that. A lot of work is going on. It's just at a snail's pace, unfortunately, but there's a lot of people working on it and doing a lot of good work. It's just taking some time. That's my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Tracy has a comment. She raised her hand.
Who's that, Tracy?
Tracy.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dunn. I just wanted to mention that we had a great conversation with Kelly Joyner and Dipti Patel, who's over Genesis database. And they are lending us some help in looking or identifying those seen PCRs. And so after we get things together, they're going to start doing that for you too. They're coming across some of those same issues, looking at it in the bigger, full database, while we're limited to only what is said to deliver to our database. So linking to those first PCRs. But I think, and this would be something that we could take back to the GCTE PI committee, a good portion of them, I'd say 25 to 30%, or maybe even a little bit more, are actually POV patients. So they were POV to the outside hospital, but we didn't have any way to identify that. And I think that's sometimes because we don't get consistent documentation from the outside hospital to the higher level center about how that patient arrived. And so you're always kind of assuming it might be EMS, but they just came by their own, somebody drove them there. So they didn't come EMS. So that will change some of our numbers. But I really wanted to give a shout out to Dipti and Kelly and her crew. Tina is working on it. That's a new member of their staff. And so she's working on it. And she's having trouble, identifying some of these John Does and stuff. But it is giving them insight into how the system is working or not working, and how to update their education to EMS, and trying, when there's inconsistencies between the name, the date of birth, or the gender on the first PCR and the second PCR, then they don't link. And so, some of it is fat fingers, but they have updated things to where you can actually scan a person's driver's license and get that information inputted to the PCR. And so that's available on the Image Trends software. So, that would behoove us to kind of push or maybe encourage systems or EMS to get that in their software, that functionality. But of course, then that's going to go back to money, having the ability to scan the driver's license. So it's always, it's a very torturous road, as you've mentioned, trying to get all this and to look at the quality of the data. But, we are making progress, and I'm really excited because they're really helping us. And it does seem the further along or more recent the PCR, the better the linking. So hopefully when they get, to helping you, that we can kind of, change that 15%, because we're seeing about 50% now, and a much higher percentage in our, from our pre-COVID group to our COVID group. And so I think even post-COVID hopefully would be even better. Thank you.
Tracy, I would assume you guys have direct access to GymSys and GymSys Elite, correct?
We do. They have created that, Hospital Hub. We have that access, but they gave us a Hospital Hub amended access for this research study. And we can look at, we have a problem in that we have a pediatric ER and an adult ER. So in Hospital Hub, they're different. So we have to toggle back and forth. And so if they're accidentally, they transpose numbers, they might look like they're, pediatric coming in, or sometimes they're told to come to the adult ER for a trauma code. We don't do those. We try not to code in the pediatric ER, but sometimes you get those people that come in and you do it. We don't have enough team to cover both ERs, but so we have some things with that. So they gave us that elite version to see if, so we don't have to toggle back and forth, is basically, and it gives us a broader view. But there's still the problem if in the background there, and we found this with one EMS agency, the state gave Navicent, and I don't know the exact number, but say they gave them, hospital 185, but in their system, they put it down as 180. So they're mapping to another hospital, and that's why we can't see it. So there are a lot of little data things in the background, but hopefully once they help, we can kind of start overcoming some of that.
Thanks, Tracy. I agree. It's a challenge because of human error with inputting of data. That's really what's causing, we're making progress. It's just slow and steady, but we're going to get some data here soon.
Tracy, Kelly, how often you see medics inputting the wrong hospital code into the record?
Well, and just so you know, the medic coded the hospital wrong in the back end of the system. And as we're finding those, we're reaching out to the vendors as well as the agency to say, you've got the wrong codes in here, you need to fix it. Because all the medic sees when they're doing the PCR is the name of the hospital. They don't see the code on the back end. And so as we're finding those, we're working through those to get those fixed. And that's kind of what you run into when you have different software systems.
Sure.
Doing the same thing.
So when a hospital changes names, how does that flow through the system?
Well, and I'll have to talk with Dipti about that, the medic sees in the system, unless it's truly a health system change. So that it's the same hospital, it just has name changes, like Atrium. Used to be the Medical Center of Central Georgia with code 123. It still has code 123, it just has the name change. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm just thinking about third-party vendors.
How
quickly are they required to change their software?
Well, we have on our system or on the national website, our data dictionary and our schematron. Anytime there's any changes to that, which is what we do, not only does it get uploaded to NEMSIS, we send out multiple forms of communication saying there's a change. You need to go look at it. And we have a change log associated with it to say, not just here's the document, but here's what's changed in the document. We just have to keep forcing the vendors to look at it and make those changes. But Tracy, I want to say thank you for that, as well as, and Dr. Dunn, your comment about it's getting better, a lot of that is because we've recognized some of these issues.
Good.
And we have started the education. So glad to hear you say it's getting better. That means the education's getting out there. And it's working, but we also have more education to do. We've got 26,000 medics in Georgia of getting everyone educated on when to choose which button the right way. As well as with our new data policies we've implemented for our third-party vendors. That was implemented in the last 6 months, where they have to go through testing with us before they can be used in the state. So that's helped as well.
Just out of curiosity, because this affects the ditch to door first hospital. My understanding is that the EMS crew, correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, is required to leave a paper copy with that hospital. Is that true or not true?
They have to leave a minimum set of data.
Okay, because as a tertiary hospital for the transferring ambulances, I never see that piece of paper. So if it's supposed to be happening, it's definitely not happening at the tertiary level. And we're certainly not seeing it in transfer from the outlying hospital to the tertiary.
Well, and the only way we can know that is hospitals call and let us know.
Well, most of this data is on iPads now, or iPads, or portable laptops. So how do they?
That's usually the full PCR, and Courtney or Terry, you can chime in. We've got what's called a quick sheet that if you can't leave the full PCR before your crew leaves, here's a quick sheet that they can fill out with that.
Ever.
Yeah, me neither.
My
Me neither.
3 hospitals that I've worked at.
Any of that either.
Well,
Getting from the back.
Yeah. Well, and that's.
We've escalated it multiple times trying to get that information, and
Is it a true requirement, or is it kind of just been the expectation that they leave a piece of paper? Because we're being quoted that it's not necessarily a requirement that you leave. It has to make it in the gym, since you have to have a report within 24 hours. We have stuff we kind of keep here and circulate it.
I
who
think
came
that's
will
what
be-
they think, as long as the PCR is dropped within 24 hours, that meets the
Well,
requirement.
it's in our rules.
Okay. Yeah, I mean.
Well,
I
apparently it's
see that,
not,
but
it's not being
not-
communicated because EMS doesn't realize.
The helicopter
Yeah,
services.
yeah,
they realize.
They do?
Florida
Okay.
Interior back me up, they
They do
know
what?
it,
Yeah.
but
They know.
you know, and I don't
They
know.
just
if
don't do
you're
it.
They just don't do
Escalating it to the ambulance service and
Well,
that's where it's stopping,
double
but
documentation.
it is in
Yeah,
our rules
sure.
that they have to do.
What, I mean, for us personally, we had escalated it to Region 10 whenever we had our meetings, but I also escalated it to DPH, who is over EMS and trauma, to try and get something, because yes, part of it, like Tracy said, is numbers being transposed incorrectly, but we find often it's just not in there. And so the reports aren't getting sent into GEMSIS, so I'm curious what type of, who's checking to make sure that happens?
Well, we do monitor the data and we monitor to make sure the reports are in there. But at the same time, just like we don't know if you see 15 patients and only 10 make it into the registry, if they transport 20 and only 10 of those PCRs make it in there, we don't know that until we know there was a transport and it's not in there.
So I feel like that's a part of the breakdown is like us being able to have a connection to say, hey, we had 20 come in, we're only seeing 10 in GEMSIS, so that you all know, because you're right, you can't follow up on something that you don't know, but if there was a good two-way communication tool for all of the hospitals to be able to use with DPH, that way you all who have oversight of EMS could go back to them and say, hey, Piedmont Avenue says you only left 10 out of 20.
And you do, and it's your regional director, and I know you said you're in 10. So we've got an interim regional director in there, and we'll have a permanent one in place within the next 30 days, I think it is. But that is another, way of following up with the original director. They can take it at that local level, and if they can't get, results, it can always be escalated up to the state office as well.
Right, but Kelly, you guys don't have the personnel. For example, if only 15% of the PCRs are being put into GEMSIS, and we come back to you and say, hey, listen, we're missing 3,000 records. You don't have the manpower to go back and find 3,000 records for each hospital that's missing them, right, April?
Well, so I think this is a much bigger problem than this trauma.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Cardiac centers, most stroke centers, they're all having the exact same.
Right.
It needs to be taken to hospital administrators, because technically for billing purposes, for medical record completion, a trip sheet or a PCR has to be a part of that medical record in order for it to technically be closed. From a medical record standpoint within your facility.
Yeah,
So
but-
they should be responsible to say, we have this many patients that came into our facility via EMS, and this many of them do not have PCRs. That's what that piece closes a medical record.
So who does the hospital administrator reach out to when they don't have those PCRs?
The agencies.
Yeah, well, we've
I mean,
tried that and the agencies don't have any, they can't help us either, so that's the problem.
Well, I would say if they are not getting the response from the agencies that they're supposed to get, then it does need to be brought to our office so that we can reprimand those agencies and let them know that, I mean, it could be an IT error, it could be something with GEMSIS.
Sure.
But technically, I think we have to approach it not just from like a trauma program, and you do not have time for that. The hospitals need to take on that responsibility. Their medical record department needs to say, we're technically not closing our medical records. And people just have not given any attention to that. Especially since the 3.5, we have a lot of hospitals right now that they were automatically flowing into the medical record with this, whatever. And now they're not, since the
Right.
3.5, so, but they didn't even know that. They didn't know that until they got surveyed by
Sure.
DMV for stroke, and come to find out for the last however many months, their PCRs aren't in there. So they
Sure.
weren't even checking because they'd gotten so accustomed to them automatically coming through. But I mean, it's a huge problem, but I think the hospital administrators, medical record team needs to take on that responsibility to make sure that a medical record is truly complete.
Right.
I think it's only 15% being completed, because that's such a large part of the billing process, is, I would think that the pre-hospital providers they've got those trip sheets somewhere potentially to.
Right.
So I think that's a great point there. The PCRs, I'm sure, are being completed.
Yes, I would
And
agree.
remember, what we're talking about is a very specific population here. We're talking about transfer patients. So like a patient gets hurt in hospital A and gets a trip sheet to hospital A and then is transferred to the trauma center, gets a second trip sheet. So that's the only group that we're actually talking about right now. So, what he's working on, you know, what we're working on definitive care. So when he says only 50, what he's saying is only 15% of that first trip sheet we can find in our records. That doesn't mean it's not done. It just means that we
That's correct.
can't find it in our records or either going through GEMSIS with the access that we have.
So it's not the transfer run sheet for coming to your facility, it's the initial one.
Right. There's some misses on those, but we get most of those.
Yeah, we
It's
get
the
about
mi-
75% of those.
It's the miss is that first one, and I'm sure it's done so the ambulance service can send a bill, because I'm sure they're sending a bill for that first one. It's just that that's not making it to us, and that's what we're trying to figure out. And Kelly's been so good with, we had a great meeting. This just happened, so this is news to you. We had the phone call, and Kelly we figured out a way to, with Dipti and with Tina to go after, and they're gonna, we turned in our list of the ones we couldn't find, and they're
Right.
gonna look at those and then use it as a PI project. So this is really good. They're gonna actually call the EMS agency for that first PCR and say, why didn't you send it in? Was it a technical error? You know, why can't we find it? And so I think a lot of the questions Kelly's gonna answer through this PI project with the state. So it's actually gonna make
Okay.
things better,
And-
not just get us the numbers we need for definitive care, but that just happened. We just had a
Yeah, and
conversation.
just to let you know, some of the initial stuff we found is, as y'all know, if Dr. Ashley's crew goes into Hospital Hub, if Tracy goes into Hospital Hub, she finds the record that comes to them. Once she finds that record, there's a related or a linkage button she can click that it looks to find that patient within 72 hours of another PCR for that patient.
That's correct.
And that will link. Now, the linkage is based on exact spelling of first name, last name.
Middle initial.
No, first
Not
name,
middle
last
initial?
name, date of birth, and gender
Okay.
within 72 hours. Most commonly, what we're seeing is that it's not an exact spelling of the first name or last name.
So Kelly, can they link back if they know it came from a manual medical center? Can they link to a manual medical center for that date trips?
No.
Is that because of a HIPAA violation?
That's because of HIPAA, then they would have access to every EMS record that come to a manual. So we're working on the education for
Sure.
that part of it, and like you said, Dr. Dunn, it's getting better.
Mhm.
It's not happening as quick as we'd like it, but it's happening, it's getting better. That's one of the first things of primarily what we see is the first name and the last name is not spelled exactly the same. And that's, we told Tracy about the scanning, which we've also started making sure our agencies know, especially if they use our system, there is a scanning feature in there. That if you scan the driver's license, it will put their name, birthday in there exactly as it's supposed to be spelled. Most of the other PCR systems have that tool too, just don't know in their system is it an add-on feature for them. So we're working on that. I even found one, which I never expected to find, that the gender was different from the first transport to the second transport. And that's why they couldn't link it, but I think that was fat fingering. They were quickly doing it and didn't realize they hit the wrong gender. So we're working on that as well. And then we have found a couple that didn't get imported because they use a third-party system and didn't realize that it didn't get imported to our system. And so what we're doing on those is we're calling those services to say, why is it in the system? You know, this
Yeah.
has to be imported.
Sure.
And as well as going on and getting the PCR for Dr. Ashley's team, so they can finish theirs, but it gives us a chance to find out
Issues.
who's not
Yeah.
who's having failures,
Yeah.
and why do they not know about it?
I would suggest from the EMS world do two things. One, have somebody from your hospital go to the regional council and talk to them, explain to them what your problem is and why it's an issue.
Already done.
So the other issue, I would tell you to go to your ER and look at the big hole in the back of the ER and find some of your trip reports. Because there's a couple of hospitals in Georgia have this big pit that they throw trip reports in. Some of them are in my region.
Well, and I have had the experience of the crews printing off the PCR and handing it to the receiving facility, and some of the staff looking at them saying, I don't want any paper, we're all electronic.
Yeah, right.
So as a point of clarification on the PCR, he was talking about the paper reports. That's in lieu of the crew not being able to complete the electronic PCR in a timely fashion. The hospital has access to it through Hospital Hub, correct?
Yes, that
So
is.
there's not a requirement to do a paper trip report on all.
There's a requirement to leave something physical with that hospital when you leave a patient. If you're going to the ER and you're doing an electronic report and it's going into your system, and within 24 hours it dumps into GEMSIS, you still have to leave a 60-second or a 1 minute, whatever you want to call it, sheet that says patient name, what you did to them, who brought the patient. And the concept there is that if you leave, turn the patient over to a nurse, the physician gets there, wants to say, hey, dang, I don't know what the mechanism injury was. They have the capability of calling the medic and saying, hey, 10 millimeter out this patient.
Or what medicine did they get in a pre-hospital setting?
Right.
There's something there that the initial staff take.
So to clarify, just to be crystal clear, there is a requirement for a paper copy to be left behind with the hospital.
There is a requirement for the required data to be minimum required data set.
So it's a paper copy,
Most
right?
of the time it is a paper copy unless there is a way that the EMS agency and the hospital has set out a way to electronically send the data over where you can get to it right then, not.
And
through
that is
hospital.
not the GEMSIS upload within 24 hours through Hospital
It
Hub.
could be if it's
Okay. So that's where the
finished.
confusion, that's where the
Okay.
confusion's coming from, right? They're thinking, the EMS agencies are thinking, all I have to do is put it in the Hospital Hub. I've uploaded it to GEMSIS, so I've met that requirement.
Okay.
And now we're saying that that's not the requirement. But you just said it. I mean, I'm confused.
Okay.
To clarify, I hear what you're hearing, to clarify, so, I would always require my crew to give me that minimum data sheet, which was check boxes and, I mean, not a whole lot of information, I mean, I think I had like vital signs, whatever.
Day or times and.
Yeah.
Medicine.
Or they would complete their PCR on their iPad, and in order for me to let them leave, they had to print that for me, they would go over to the ER, they would use their printer and print it out and give it to me.
So does anything define those data sets that are required on what's to be
We're gonna have to move on.
Yeah.
Yes, it's in our rule, and all of them say what rule number it is and write it down. That has the minimum required data set.
So we're gonna, thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate your input in this. It's the same as April. We've spent a lot more time on this than we were allotted for. As you can see, this is a big issue. We will address this issue through the subcommittee and we'll report back out to the full commission. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, for your help with that. We're gonna get those numbers for us.
Yeah.
Pursuant to our last conversation. Thank you. Was that it, Jim?
That's it. Yes, I'm
Okay.
finished. Thank you.
Why don't we move into the Trauma Medical Directors Committee report? Dr. Matt Bassey. Dr. Bassey, you there?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Ashley. Can you guys hear?
I can hear you fine. Go ahead.
All right. So just a couple of things I want to share. I'll be really brief. I do want to share a couple of slides if I can share my screen here in a second. On the committee report list, kind of at the top of the list still is our revitalization. I've kind of been able to trim down the list and update our contact list. There's still about 40 names on the list when you take out the redundancies, and there's still some responses that I'm still forward to get. And so we're trimming that down to make it accurate, but we did send out this survey and real briefly, I'll just kind of, if I can share screen here. Let's see. And and see if you guys can see that. So these are just the results of the survey. Out of the 40 folks that I sent this out to, I got 24 responses thus far, so not too bad, about 60%. But there's some interesting things. First of all, we got a good cross section of center levels across the state, so that was good. We got a good cross section of obviously most of our centers are going to be rural, but a good cross section of type of center. I was encouraged by the fact that most centers consider themselves pretty active with TQIP, either with frequent QI projects or with at least occasional QI projects. So that was certainly encouraging as well. The real questions I wanted to kind of get at are the next few, and I'm in the process of really trying to delve deeper into these as far as where the centers come from, or where the answers come from in terms of stratified by the type of center and the level of center as well. But the interesting thing as far as perception goes, both from receiving as well as sending transferred patients, both in the perceived frequency of the delay as well as the length of time the delay actually entails. It seemed like the opinions out there are that the time to arrange transfer, once the accepting facility has been determined, seems to be the most common and the longest delay. So I thought that was pretty interesting information as far as how it pertains to our time to definitive care. One point I wanted to just add to the previous conversation about the Ditch to Door project is I think it's going to be important to stratify, and Courtney got to this point earlier in talking about importance of EMS and the legislation that's been proposed. I think it's really important to stratify those transferred patients, both in our Ditch to Door project and maybe even in further versions of this survey, between those that actually require urgent or emergent intervention or have higher ISS and those that really don't. Because my guess is just from experience that most of the transferred patients that we're talking about are maybe urgent, but not emergent, I guess is maybe the best way to do it. The other final couple of questions are about diversion, complete trauma diversion. Most folks either won't admit it or don't ever or rarely go on diversion completely, and that's the same for transfer diversion as well. And again, the final question on the survey was who accepts your trauma transfers, and most of the time this is going to be trauma surgeon only. I would anticipate this might be a little bit of a delay if that's who is accepting all the trauma transfers that are going to higher levels of care, just because of availability to get on the phone. But that wasn't perceived to be one of the longer or more frequent delays. So good encouraging results from responsiveness, and so and I'm hoping to kind of dovetail on that and take those that responded and maybe increase a little bit of engagement from the group. So any questions about the survey before we move on? So I'll stop screen sharing here and just kind of get back to the report. I do want to still get a good bit of feedback, and I know thanks Dr. Patterson for the update on the March Pause project. I do want to get some more input in terms of the early transfer guidelines that we want to redistribute to make sure that they're in the format of the March Pause, so that we're all kind of beating the same drum as far as that goes. So I'm continuing to reach out to the team that are putting the March Pause together to make sure that that's still going to be the focus. I did have a chance to, I know at our last commission meeting, Dr. Dunn mentioned the transfer referring center feedback project that GCTE is working on. I did have a chance to talk with Lynn Grant on a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, just to get the initial gist of that. And I know that project is fairly early on in its development, but I did offer our committee's participation in terms of getting some feedback on the initial rough draft, if and when that's available, in terms of what we think important information to give and to get for that feedback might be. And the last thing I'll mention is I want to start formalizing some in-person meetings. We've traditionally tagged on to our GQIP calls on the last, the tail end of those calls as far as the committee goes for our meetings, and the next one of those will be next week. But I definitely want to get with Gina and or Liz about our winter/spring meeting schedule to see if there's a time that works out better for us to have an in-person meeting of some of the more active players. So with that being said, that'll finish up my report, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions or suggestions.
Dr. Vassy, that was a great report, and thanks for revitalizing the Trauma Medical Directors Committee, which was sort of a little bit sunsetted there for a lot of different reasons. But I think you've done a good job of really re-engaging folks, and especially getting all levels involved. And I think the survey was, very enlightening, and you can probably keep following up on that and drilling down. That'll help guide your group. The referring center feedback project, I think, is a really good one, and looked like I was thinking about doing something there. It looks like you're well ahead of things, but I think maybe getting the TMDs all together and working on that like you are, and then working with maybe Dr. Patterson and Dr. Register's group for more rural Georgia to make sure that we develop. I think we should all be doing it pretty much the same way. I was thinking we're sort of looking at how we get feedback back. You heard Tracy talk about, we had sort of a very sophisticated system, and then we started using more verbal feedback and phone calls. And so I don't know that each level 1 or 2 or whatever needs to come up with some spectacular design on their own. If we standardize how we do it across the state, and let this come from your committee with the rural committee, this might be the best place. So it looks like you're already working on it. So I just comment to say, try to standardize, because I'd like for us all to do pretty much the same way, so everybody feels like they are getting the feedback they need. And we need not to tell the referring centers what they're going to get. We need to ask them, like you're doing, what they need, and give them the feedback that they want. So please continue that work.
Yeah, I think that's important. And one of the things that Lynn and I talked about was having an expectation both from the sending and receiving facility about the information that's going to be transferred and shared. It takes a little bit of the onus. I know sometimes we're hesitant to provide too much feedback because we want to make sure what we provide is helpful and welcomed and not taken in the wrong light. So I think having a standard way of providing that, and so that everybody knows what the expectations are, I think is going to help everybody.
I think too, letting your committee, and I left out GCTE, they need to be a part of that discussion, that committee as well, between GCTE, Rural Committee, and the TMD committee. But if you identify, you don't want to just send a letter or an email to some random person just because it has ER director on their nameplate. You need that personal relationship that like each receiving center needs to have somebody identified in all the referring centers in the region. This is who we communicate with. And then you take out, if you have to send something back a little pithy, like, well, they got 8 liters of IV fluids and no blood. Maybe we could do a little better next time. Then it's a conversation that's taken in the right light, because there's a relationship as opposed to just a random email that somebody takes offense to. So I think identifying partners in those shops where, again, what you all could do, it'll take a little while to do, but identifying partners to email to would really move this to the next level. So I think you're onto something. I just encourage you to keep eating the elephant one bite at a time.
That's such a good point, and I'll belabor it, but, we as the smaller centers, we change practice based on our feedback from grading. When we get feedback from grading, we change practice. So,
That's great.
don't take easy that we're not taking highly the information. We love getting it back. You can't send too much. I mean, we modify practice based on your expertise, so it helps us a lot.
If you have it, you can't send too much.
I'm glad you said that because, even at a level 1 trauma center, we're big level 1, whatever. But we're not, and we do pediatrics, but, we send some children to CHOA. And when we get feedback, we have a very tight relationship with CHOA, and we get feedback, and they critique, when we scan too many, and we've incorporated some of the work that was done in the state here about radiation to children. So we've incorporated some of their guidelines into our trauma team. And they'll tell us, we have a relationship now. You're like, well, you probably didn't need that pan scan on that 3-year-old child. And we talk about it and we think about it. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I'm looking at that child, and I know I'm going to transfer, I'm thinking, oh, is CHOA going to bust me for this one? Or they're going to, is Josie going to call me next week and say, we shouldn't have scanned that child? So I literally changed my practice at 2 in the morning, but that's good. And I've cut down my radiation to children because of that relationship. And so anyway, I think that's what we need to build across the state. So I'm really glad you said that. That's good feedback.
I'd add one comment to that. I'd encourage that feedback to be included to the EMS services. I think it'd be valuable and beneficial to them as well. Whether that comes from the referring facility that's sent in, but just keep it in mind.
No,
as they're
that's,
working on.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Terry. So Matt, we left that out as the discussion evolves. EMS subcommittee should be involved with those discussions too, because they may have different wants than the referring hospital. And we don't need to assume what EMS wants. You need to tell us, I want to know A, B, and C, and go from there. So include them too, Matt. You got a lot of people to talk to now. You'll never be lonely.
Yeah, that'll be a kind of a whole second set of priorities, because they'll definitely be different for sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Vassy? Okay, thanks, Matt. We appreciate you. Great report. Okay, so why don't we move into the Trauma Foundation report? Who's going to give?
I'll give that.
Dr. Bleacher? Okay.
So we're running a fair bit behind, so I will just highlight a couple of things on our report. The first one being board expansion, which requires a vote from this commission. I'd like to forward the name of Scott Hill, who is president and CEO of Piedmont Columbus Regional Hospital. He has been discussed at the foundation board level, and we have approved him as someone that we would like to join the board. He is the president CEO of a level 2 trauma center in Region 7. I think having that region represented is important. He also has some experience with national trauma events. He was the CEO of a small hospital in Blacksburg, Virginia at the time of the Virginia Tech shooting. So this is something that's near and dear to his heart and something that he has interest in. He is very involved in his community in Columbus. And despite the fact that he's a busy person, he expressed a fair bit of enthusiasm about the possibility of joining the board. So I think he would be a great addition. And so I'd like to present him to this commission for approval to be on the board of the foundation.
Now, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's coming out of a committee from a board member who's a member of this commission, we don't need a motion. We can just have a discussion and then vote. Any discussion regarding the addition of Scott Hill to the board of the foundation? All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The only other thing that I'd like to highlight on our reports in the interest of time is the gala. It's a major public awareness and fundraising event that will occur on May 18th. And Cheryl is already selling sponsorships. And so if any of you are interested in some level of sponsorship, please see Cheryl. I would really like to see a robust turnout from those stakeholders in this room and other stakeholders in the state to support this endeavor. I think it's a great thing for us to gain awareness in the public eye. We also would like to try to have some politicians, people who can further our mission in that event. So please mark your calendars for May 18th and talk to Cheryl about sponsorships.
Is there like a pro forma or something that has all the levels of sponsorships and stuff so you could share?
Yes, Cheryl has the packets for that.
Okay. And yeah, if you could send that out electronically also, that'd be great.
Yes, so in case everybody didn't hear, he was inquiring about a packet that has the different sponsorship levels. And I will make sure that I send it out to all of you so that you'll have it. It'll be electronic, but you should also be able to completely fill it out there. If you have questions, then certainly make sure that you see me as it relates to that. Just to piggyback on something that Dr. Bleacher said, we are making efforts to invite lots of corporation representatives from various family foundations, and then some government officials. So it's going to be very key that we have a good representation from the trauma community so that they can see you all, because this is not for the foundation. We're raising the money to support the trauma system. So we need a lot of representation from the trauma system there. Right now, the sponsorship packages are available, and then in a couple of weeks, we'll make individual tickets available for purchase, so you all will receive information on that as well. So thank you in advance for your support.
And Dr. Dunn, that concludes my report.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bleacher. Okay, we'll move on to the GQuip. Let me see here. I have it right here. So Dr. Todd and Gina for the GQuip presentation. Gina's standing up and ready to go.
I was ready. I was trying to be ready. In the interest of time, I'll kind of highlight the two things in your packet that are important. The biggest one is that Arbormetrics kicked off. It's live, finally. You know, it seems like it took us a long time to get here. It did, but the platform went live on December 20th. And actually, as of February 5th, all the centers have logons and are active. So that is very exciting. So it only starts the project though, although we did a lot of back work. But I'm really excited about that. So we're working through getting everybody logged on and making sure that everything works and that the data loads. I'm learning there's still a lot of work because every time we load data into it, we just have to make sure that there's no kinks there.
Right.
So everything is loaded through September of 2023. In the system, we had to work through some kinks with that. So, but now that the data is loaded, I want everybody to learn how to use the system and also make sure that their data looks like it should. And then, you know, we'll start working through those little bugs with Arbormetrics on that, and then see what we want to do next. And then the next step is to look at what our risk-adjusted benchmarking will look like, because what's in there now is not risk-adjusted. We will build that. That'll be the next step. is my understanding. So we'll get to that. So it's like, it was kind of like anticlimactic to just put that little blurb in there that is live with all the work being done, but that is exciting. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that we have our scholar for the next, Eli will be leaving us in June. So starting July 1st, we will have a new GQuIP scholar, and Dr. Ray Galloway is our next scholar. And we have this great transition actually going on. He's already coming to our weekly meetings. He is a quality fellow at the VA right now and has been for the last 2 years. So he has already been immersed in quality. It's already been great working with him. So I think he will be a great addition. And because of the ability of him and Eli to transition, Eli's already getting his feet wet and he's already learning what's going on. So he will be at the spring meeting. So y'all will have a chance to meet him and everything. So I think that will be really great. And we're in the throes of working on the spring meeting coming up in May. And we have a GQuIP call next week, next Tuesday. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions for Gina or Dr. Todd? All right, thank you, Gina. Appreciate it. We'll move on to the Office of EMS&T. April?
Stacy.
Stacy?
Here are our updates today.
Hello, everybody. Well, the report's in y'all's packets, but I'm gonna just summarize a couple of things. A large event that we had, as y'all know, with the image trend data being uploaded. We got the SDL where facilities can import it and then push their data over. We've had good success with that, but we are still needing 2 more facilities, and they are working with us to try to fix those bugs and kinks to see if we can get those the last 2 sent over. A thing with our facility, we're working with a lot of the centers. Gina and Marie are doing data validation visits. And then myself, April, and Marie are also doing consult visits with the centers to help them be successful with their ACS visits and verification, or if we're just going to do a state visit, we want them to be successful, as Dr. Ashley had mentioned. We don't want facilities to fail. We don't want facilities to not do well. So we're doing an extra consult to try to seek their needs and seek what they need to do so they're successful, and then checking with their data with Marie and Gina. The ongoing work with Kelly and Liz, and then of course Richard and Heather and Liz to help with the EMS, with identifying hospitals and location, and helping the training courses with that. And then April's going to talk about the armband project, just to kind of summarize a little bit more of that challenge.
Just a little brief update for the armband project. I've been kind of diving into those records. Just bear in mind, the data that we have for that right now is only 5 months, because we only have records up until calendar third quarter.
Okay.
Which is technically, the way the trauma falls for fiscal. So out of those records, we do have 22 armbands in patient registry.
Okay.
Armband numbers, yeah. And 159 of them that should have. So there's 226 total EMS records that came by ground from White and Lumpkin County, but only 159 of those actually met registry criteria.
Okay.
So out of the 159, we have 22 records. This is only for 5 months, and what you said, 2 of those were interfacility.
Right.
Not a lot to show as far as the interfacility transports. We have a meeting next week to dive a little more into the data to see what we can really get from it, but it was way less than I thought it was gonna be as far as who would have even needed or had an armband. Because for the center that we piloted, there was 2,194 total records. 1,967 of them came by EMS, but only 159 of them actually
were registry patients
Right.
for that time period.
Sure.
So, I mean, it dwindled down a lot. So we're still looking into it, see what more data we can get you. And then hopefully when we get the next quarter, there will be more because, you know, that education took a while to push out. Didn't expect it to be 100% right away. So we'll see what the next quarter, the last 3 months
Sure.
of the calendar year shows us.
Okay.
And we may be able to glean some more data from that. Understand that's just from us having the data for a week.
I've spent.
Yeah, we've only had the hospital data for a week. And so that's what our preliminary findings are.
Sure.
But as we have more time to dig into it, I think we're gonna be able to find some other information as well.
So for those 159 that met registry criteria,
That were transported in White and Lumpkin County.
That met registry criteria.
Correct, yeah.
so White and going to Northeast Georgia, are those counties contiguous? Because I'm looking at, it seems, what I'm hearing is that only 2 of those 159 were in a hospital. So only 2 of those went to another hospital and then were transported. Is that right?
Correct.
So are White and Lumpkin contiguous with Hall County?
Yes. And I mean, I think looking at it from like, North Georgia Health System has a very good command center that directs their EMS traffic. So if they're getting a patient by ground or air, their control center goes ahead and screens and says, no, you just need to come on here. So I don't know that it's gonna ever show us the transfers, because they do a really good job of getting their patients to the tertiary facility the first time. So in a way, I think it shows us like, okay, they're doing a good job already, but then if we piloted this somewhere else, like I'd really be curious, Dr. Dunn, I was thinking about like Effingham area, Liberty, some of those, like I know there's a lot more distance in between and time, so they are stopping at that remote center
Sure.
first. So I'd be curious to see what kind of different data we would see if we did it in a more rural area and without it being interconnected facilities that have a control center that's already controlling their ground traffic.
Right.
That's a blessing to have what they have that most people don't have. So
It
is that a possibility to have a pilot or do it someplace like you just described, up wherever that?
It is a possibility as long as law enforcement is agreeable. Because one thing we've got to remember, GOHS is the one funding it. So the governor's office of highway safety with regarding the crash records, if we can get law enforcement involved in participating, yes, that's a possibility.
If you need like us to say, this is a great project, or we would support it, to send them a letter, or I'd be willing to do that if we can help you, you know.
I see this as being monumentally helpful once it rolls out statewide for the question that you got asked at the House Appropriations hearing about what % of these are motor vehicle crashes, right?
Well, no, the trouble is this would only be motor vehicle crashes. It wouldn't be everybody.
Well,
because
that's not what what we want is motor vehicle crashes, because that's what he was asked, on two.
Oh, he wanted exactly how many motor vehicle
Well,
crashes?
he was just curious. I mean, this would give us the
Uh-huh.
true number. So while it might not be helpful for the ditch to door, it can
I was
help us
saying,
really.
The GEMSA data should easily tell you what percentage of our patients are involved in motor vehicle crashes.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we could tell that.
These current records are not just motor vehicle accidents, they're all trauma patients.
Right, but in order to get additional grant funding, NIMSA, NTS, or somebody, whoever gave you the initial grant said from now on, we're only gonna fund it for motor vehicle crashes. Is that correct? Is that my
Yes,
understanding,
for the
Kelly?
arm band.
Yeah.
Yeah, our original was we wanted to put it on every trauma patient.
Right.
And because GOHS funded it, they put stipulations on it and said it's gotta come back to what we're doing, which is traffic related crashes. So it's not just, just crashes. It could be ATV, it could be any of those roadway type incidents, but yes, that's our limitation.
So is the goal, is the goal, the inline for this to be statewide for motor vehicle crashes or motorcycle
We'd
crashes?
love for the goal for it to be statewide for all systems of care related patients.
Uh-huh.
That way, if we're seeing it to work, being able to link all those records, not just on trauma, but, you know, even cardiac and stroke of, because they have the same issue of going to hospital number 1 first and then going to hospital number 2. But on this specific project, yes, if we can show it's making a difference, it's working, that it's giving us data of what we're trying to see is yes, going statewide.
Is that you think that'll happen, or is that a possibility?
To be honest with you, I think we may have to do a different area of the state to see that it's worthy of the extra work for everybody involved.
The challenge with the armband project, my understanding, it's not necessarily a challenge, but the reality of the situation is the amount of education that requires to get this project off the ground is enormous, because you have to contact you have to train each individual police officer, fire, and the receiving hospital, EMS, to make sure that the armband actually gets applied. Is that my understanding?
It is, and you know, on the EMS side, we did a lot. Our staff did a lot of the one-on-one training with the EMS crews. Just one of the reasons is we wanted to hear what questions they were going to have that maybe we didn't cover good enough, or if they thought of stuff we hadn't thought of.
Sure.
On the law enforcement side, we did offer virtual training so that the individual officers could come to, as well as we gave the training to their training officer to deliver to their staff. On the hospital side, we educated the main hospital educating staff, and then they took it to their staff.
Right.
So it's a lot of education when you look at it that way, but there's ways of rolling it out so that everyone can get that.
So we know a little bit about how you're leaking the hospitals. What kind of success are you having linking it back to a traffic accident? The
And
law enforcement.
we're now starting to work on that now that we've got the hospital records too. We've been working with GOHS of here's the records we have with our bands. Can you go look at your records? How many do you have? I will tell you, it looks a little bit like the hospital records. We have 200 and something armbands applied, but less than 50% are documented. We're still working on that.
And I think that that's gonna be the most challenging part, I think, EMS, almost every single transport that was appropriate, there's an RPN number attached to it in Genesis. The registrar that's entering into the trauma registry was able to find 22 armband numbers documented in the medical record. So that's one of the major problems is they may have an armband on, but it's not getting documented in the hospital. So when the data is being abstracted, they can't link them together because it never got put into the medical record.
And that's what we've just been able to figure out within the past week because we got the hospital records.
Yeah.
So that's our first initial, but trying to dig into it and find more information to go back and whether it's re-educate or do we look at it and say, we might, since they're going to the right place the first time, majority of the time in this area, do we need to go to another area where we know there's a lot of trauma transfers? Does that make sense?
Yep, sure.
Jesse Gibson has a comment.
Hey,
Go ahead.
can you guys hear me? This is Jesse Gibson from Northeast Georgia.
Go ahead.
Hey, I was just going to kind of add to this conversation since our team here has been a heavy part in this. Some of the barriers in what we're seeing is because it's just the two services or two or three services and it's just MVCs that the nurses and the ED, I mean, it's very hard to remember, oh, this MVC from White County, I should be looking for an armband and I should put that into the record. So that's where we're seeing a lot of those discrepancies they just talked about. My opinion from doing this for several months is it's going to be very difficult unless we broaden that, broaden our, catch to all trauma patients because it's just hard for them to decipher in the moment, you know, this service, this injury, or this mechanism of injury. And I understand this is a pilot, but I think that's going to contribute to some of the success is because it does have those barriers.
We agree with Jesse too. And that's one of the things we went back to GOHS and said, but we really need to put this on all trauma patients, not just the MVCs, because asking each of these clinicians to remember the exact type of patient it should be applied to or look for is going to be very, very difficult, or could be difficult. And your staff is working on, our staff are working on patients. They shouldn't have to think about that. It's a trauma, put it on.
Yeah.
And so we haven't gotten a response back from GOHS on that yet.
That makes sense. Okay, any other questions or any other part of the report, April?
No, I think the only thing to know is we did finally, because, you know, there was delays in getting all of the data over the last year and a half. We're caught up with our annual reports through 2022 that are posted on our website. So anybody that wants to access those, they are on our website. 2023, as soon as all of those records are closed and completed, we will have access to be able to move forward with those as well. So hopefully less data problems moving forward now that we've got all that worked out. We have quite a few big site visits coming up. I'm super excited about one in particular this month that I want to say thank you to the visitors that are going to be participating in that site visit with us. It's going to be big for our state, I feel like. And I also want to say thank you to, we made an announcement, I guess, the last meeting or the last couple of meetings that we were looking for site visitors to help conduct our trauma designation visits. And I've had really good responses with that. A lot of volunteers to help with that. So that's much appreciated. Your expertise is needed, especially with our level 4 facilities. So thank you for those of you that have reached out and been willing to help us.
And can I add one more thing that this is more new that April knows about it, I want to tell her. We have, the Office of EMS has started back doing an EMS annual report as well. Of Office of EMS Entrepreneur.
I announced that last week.
Okay. Office of EMS and Trauma annual report. The last one that was published was back in 2006. And it's on our website today. And I have been working on all week trying to get an email out to notify everybody, and I'll send it to you guys so you can distribute to the commission members. We've gotten some printed, but we haven't gotten them yet. As soon as we do, we'll get you one. But it's for 21 and 22 that you can go in there and look at, and it's got EMS data, operational data. It's got all of our systems of care data in there for those. And now we're working on 23, the 23 operating report or annual report to come out before the end of the second quarter this calendar year. And our goal is that will come out every year by the second quarter of the year.
Very good.
So we're excited about that. It's our first one we've done in a while.
Good. Yeah, congratulations. I've been glad to see those come out. So, very good. Okay, anything else?
Did you guys notice your rule changes yet, or when is that happening? Okay.
We're waiting on our
Or will you just let us know before when the notice goes live? Because I don't know how to get like boop, you know, this is going. Or so
oh yeah, yes, we definitely will include you. Not only does it get posted on BPH's website and the OEMS website, we send out emails too.
Okay.
And we'll definitely make sure y'all are.
Thank you, because yeah, we hadn't in the past, so that would be helpful. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for that report. I don't have any new business. Any commission members have any new business that didn't make the agenda? Okay. What we'll do then is I'll need a motion to adjourn this meeting, and then the commission will go into closed session. We'll have lunch provided, be commission only.
It's
I
in this
think that
room
can-
directly next
right-
door to
right
us.
to our left,
Mhm.
okay? So can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting? Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. And again, Gabby and Katie, thank you. Great job.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you very much.
Very nice. Very good.